Chapter 2052. Ding! Host has completed the second round of the chain random quest. After Zijin returned to the Zijin family, a system notification rang out in Yixian's mind. After Zijin's father heard about it, he was very happy and quickly came to see him. Zijin, you're finally back. Zijin's father, Zilai, couldn't help but say. Father, why do you look a little off? Although they hadn't seen each other for many years, Zijin still felt that something was off. Zilai paused for a moment before replying. Sai, just this morning, another 3 clansmen died. Did Zifeng do it? Zijin asked. I'm not sure, but there's an 80% chance that it was him. We never found the corpses of those people, otherwise, I could have revived them. Zilai shook his head helplessly. He was already a 5th-rank Imperial Emperor expert. Reviving 1st-rank and 2nd-rank Imperial Emperors was extremely easy for him. However, without corpses, even a 9th-rank Imperial Emperor would be powerless. This Zifeng is truly deranged. We were born from the same root, but he actually wants to exterminate our clan. Zijin couldn't help but say. There's nothing we can do about it. After all, the other branches are all subordinate to him. Moreover, he's also a 6th-rank Imperial Emperor. We're simply no match for him. Zilai shook his head. Everyone was silent. At this moment, Zijin suddenly said, Father, this is my savior, Yixian. Moreover, he's very capable. We can get him to help us transform into my appearance and then confront Zifeng. This seems to be useless. Even if you confront him, with his current abilities, no one would dare to say anything. Zilai shook his head. Then we can't let him do as he pleases. At most, we'll just fight. Zijin was also provoked and shouted angrily. There's no rush. Zijin has extremely high cultivation talent. Now that he has the black gold stones, he can quickly recover his strength and break through. As long as he grows in secret, we won't have to fear Zifeng anymore. After Zilai finished speaking, he took out 10 black gold stones and said, Zijin, these are 10 top-quality black gold stones. Take them and refine them. As expected of a great clan, they took out 10 top-quality black gold stones in one go. With these 10 top-quality black gold stones, Zijin might be able to quickly break through to 3rd-rank Imperial Emperor. At the current level, it was not only possible to increase one's level by stealing others' fates. As long as one strengthened one's own body or increased one's own saint energy, one's fate's level would be increased. In short, the stronger one was, the more they would be favored by the heavens. However, Supreme Monarch of Zijin was now under Yixian's control. Therefore, these 10 supreme-grade black gold ores would fall into Yixian's pocket. Ding! The host has triggered the 3rd round of the chain mission. Kill Zifeng. The system prompted. Previously, he had already spent quite a bit of time searching for the Zijin clan and hurrying on with his journey. If he did not hurry up, his rewards would be completely deducted. Therefore, Yixian asked Monarch Zijin to stay in the Zijin clan while the sword god avatar left. Half of the 10 black gold stones were used to strengthen the black gold sword attendants. The rest were used as backups. When the time came, they could quickly cool down the divine sword technique. However, before Yixian left, he first dismembered Emperor of the Purple Gold. Apart from the head, everything else was devoured by the Mask of Authenticity. If Emperor of the Purple Gold did not die, it would be easy to recover. However, if it died, it would consume a large amount of fate to revive. Now, the Mask of Authenticity was already 80% authentic. Even Zijin's father, Zilai, would not be able to recognize it. Then, Yixian asked the sword god avatar to wear the Mask of Authenticity and disguise himself as Emperor of Zijin. He then headed to the Black Gold clan. This Black Gold clan was 100 times stronger than before. The current clan master, Zifeng, was already a rank 6 Imperial Emperor expert. Although Yixian's original body had experienced many things on the way to the Zijin clan, he was only a rank 9 half Imperial Emperor now. It was still not time for him to fight against Zifeng. However, he could start from other aspects. For example, the Black Gold Mine. At this moment, Yixian had already arrived near the Black Gold Mine. This place was an important area of the Black Gold clan. However, the sword god avatar had the Void Spirit Divine armor, which fooled many people. He arrived at the entrance of the Black Gold Mine. Then, he asked the old tree and black horn to make a diversion. Just like that, he entered the black gold mine. This black gold mine was hundreds or even thousands of times bigger than the one in the devouring space. After all, this black gold mine had been formed for countless years. However, only the center of the black gold mine was guarded by experts. Under normal circumstances, it would be some ordinary people mining the black gold mine. This time, Yi Xian wanted to make the black gold clan bleed a lot. Collect them. Without saying anything, he began to use the devouring space to mine the black gold mine. His speed was much faster than others. It was best for ordinary people to collect the complete black gold mine. That way, the price would be higher. However, Yi Xian was different. He did not have such a requirement. In any case, he just collected all of the black gold mine. After all, these black gold mine were all used by him to forge emperor artifacts. In the following period of time, Yi Xian collected a large amount of black gold mine. The amount was as high as 100,000. There were also many top-grade black gold mine. The strength of the black gold sword servants had undergone a tremendous change. At this moment, a nearby black gold clan expert noticed something amiss. He immediately went over to check. However, he did not find anything. However, just as he turned around, the sound of a strong wind came from behind him. Rip! A crisp sound was heard. This second-rank imperial emperor of the Black Gold clan was directly beheaded by Yi Xian. The heavenly fate and the corpse were all collected by Yi Xian in an instant. Now, he was standing on the side of the Purple Gold clan. Anyone from the Black Gold clan was his enemy. Yi Xian, who was already a half-step imperial emperor, was very lacking in heavenly fate. This was because as long as he had enough heavenly fate, he would be able to break through to the imperial emperor realm. Based on his current situation, this realm should not be too far away. In the following period of time, Yi Xian wandered around the Black Gold mine. Anyone from the Black Gold clan that he encountered could not escape death. However, these people's realms were not high. At most, they were only third-rank imperial emperors. Therefore, they all turned into Yi Xian's experience points. At this moment, Yi Xian had obtained another heavenly fate. He quickly devoured it. In the next moment, he heard a system notification sound. Ding! The heavenly fate has been upgraded to 34th grade. Host has broken through to first-rank imperial emperor. Finally, Yi Xian broke through. Although there was a difference of a whole realm between a half-step imperial emperor and an imperial emperor, the increase in strength was much less than that of a Samsara Dao Lord and a half-step imperial emperor. However, this was already very good. This meant that Yi Xian could go and see the depths of the Black Gold mine. The depths of the Black Gold mine was where the Black Gold mine was located. It was said that in the years when the Purple Gold Emperor was sealed, the Black Gold clan gave birth to 2 more disciples who had condensed the Black Gold mine. Chapter 2053. If I can obtain these 3 black gold ores, the expansion speed of the black gold ores in the devouring space will increase by several times. Yi Xian's eyes lit up. However, there were a large number of experts guarding the depths of the black gold ores. Other than the 5 rank 4 imperial emperors, there was also a rank 5 imperial emperor. This defense could be said to be impregnable. It would not be that easy to obtain the black gold ores from these people. However, it was even more impossible for him to stop Yi Xian at this level. Immediately, the sword god's clone charged straight in. Furthermore, he immediately unleashed his ultimate move upon disagreeing. Divine Sword Technique. A divine sword appeared out of thin air and slashed down. With lightning speed, it killed one of the imperial emperors. In an instant, there was one less person. At this moment, there were only 4 rank 4 imperial emperors and that rank 5 imperial emperor left in the depths of the black gold ores. Battle God Mount. Black Gold Sword Attendant. The sword god's clone first summoned the old tree and black horn. Then, he summoned the battle god mount and the black gold sword attendant. This time, Yi Xian's summoning was not bad. He summoned a gold rank mount. Merely, in this sort of situation, if this gold rank mount were to join hands with others, it would, at the very most, be able to stop 2 rank 4 imperial emperors. As for the rest, there was nothing they could do. However, their goal this time was not to kill everyone. Instead, they were going to obtain the 3 black gold ores. At this moment, Eye of Assassination. The sword god's clone's eyes flashed. His figure instantly disappeared and appeared behind a rank 5 Imperial Emperor guarding the black gold ores. What? This rank 5 Imperial Emperor was extremely shocked. In the next moment, he saw the sword god's clone slash out with his full strength. Clang! A crisp sound was heard. This rank 5 Imperial Emperor blocked the sword god's clone's attack. However, in the next moment, the sword in his hand suddenly exploded. The sword god's clone also possessed the demigod sword god bloodline. Thus, he possessed absolute control over swords. Furthermore, he was able to use sword burst. The better the quality of the sword in his hand, the more powerful sword burst would be. Of course, if the quality of the sword was too good, he would not be able to use sword burst. Bang! The sword shattered into countless pieces and instantly entered that rank 5 Imperial Emperor's body. Fortunately, this rank 5 Sovereign Emperor was a member of the Purple Gold clan. Furthermore, he had been strengthened by the Black Gold clan all year round, so his body was extremely tough. I'll take it. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the sword god avatar attacked again. Another divine sword fell and instantly broke the seal on the 3 black gold minerals. Then, the black gold minerals inside were directly absorbed into the old tree's devouring space. Previously, Xianxia had collected a large amount of black gold ores. Therefore, after using the divine sword technique once, he immediately devoured the pseudo-emperor weapons and recovered his cooldown. Bastard! The reason for that was because those 3 black gold ores were the lifeblood of their black gold clan. If they were to lose them, their black gold clan would have no one to rely on in the future. It was precisely because it was so important that he, a rank 5 Imperial Emperor, was sent to oversee it. Other than that, there were also 5 rank 4 Imperial Emperors. His strength was already sufficient to face a rank 6 Imperial Emperor. Unfortunately, those 3 black gold minerals were still obtained by Xianxia. We cannot stay here for long. Let's go. Without saying anything else, Xianxia ordered the sword god avatar to retreat. However, he had taken away the black gold minerals. These people from the Black Gold clan would not let him off so easily. After that rank 5 Imperial Emperor attacked, the old tree, Blackhorn and the Silver Mount all died miserably. As for that black gold sword attendant, because it had been strengthened many times, it was very resistant to grass and was still standing strong. You asked for this. At this moment, the sword god avatar flashed behind another person and slashed down again. Another divine sword appeared and killed a rank 4 Imperial Emperor. With the enormous black gold ores as support, the divine sword technique's cooldown recovery was very fast. Although it was impossible to forge a good emperor weapon with just black gold ores, Xianxia did not have any other materials. Furthermore, he had the most black gold ores. Thus, he used them to increase the cooldown of the divine sword technique. Seeing that his companions had died miserably, that rank 5 Imperial Emperor immediately went mad. At the same time, the others also quickly reported this matter to Zifeng. What a joke! The Black Gold clan's most important black gold minerals had been snatched away. The importance of this matter was second only to the destruction of their clan. Unfortunately, if the sword god avatar wanted to leave, they would not be able to stop him. However, the sword god avatar did not have any intention of leaving. Instead, he silently put away the black gold sword attendant and acted as a punching bag. In any case, since he could not kill him, he would just vent his anger. At the same time, Xianxia, who had obtained the 3 black gold minerals, had already planted them in his devouring space. The 4 black gold minerals were able to form black gold ores at all times. With every second that passed in the outside world, Xianxia would gain something. How could this be described as pleasurable? After the Black Gold clan's current clan leader, Zifeng, received the news, he immediately rushed over. A bunch of trash. You can't even stop a single rank 1 Imperial Emperor? Zifeng cursed angrily. Clan leader, this person's abilities are exceptional. Furthermore, I do not know how he refined his body. My attacks were simply ineffective against him. Furthermore, I have already taken away his Cosmos ring. However, the things inside are not in it. That rank 5 Imperial Emperor immediately replied. Humph. Zifeng immediately examined the sword god avatar carefully. Sure enough, the sword god avatar did not have any other Cosmos rings on him. Feeling helpless, he decided to first capture the sword god avatar and then search his soul. However, it was impossible for him to capture the sword god avatar. One must know that the sword god avatar possessed an unparalleled body. Apart from being unparalleled, he was also immune to all sorts of oppressive might. Even if an eternal imperial emperor was present, they would not be able to suppress him. Whoosh! Zifeng turned into a ray of black light and flew toward the sword god avatar. He slapped his palm onto the sword god avatar's shoulder. However, in the next moment, the sword god avatar's figure instantly disappeared. Then, he appeared behind a rank 4 imperial emperor. Divine sword technique. Slash! In an instant, another rank 4 imperial emperor was killed. His corpse was taken away along with his destiny. However, this was already the last time Yixian used the divine sword technique. The black gold ores he obtained from the black gold ore vein had all been used up. However, he had already obtained 4 black gold ores. As long as he was given enough time, he would be able to recover. When the surrounding black gold family's people saw that their clan leader was actually unable to do anything to the sword god avatar, they were astonished. A rank 6 imperial emperor was actually unable to injure a rank 2 imperial emperor? How was this possible? The battle here had also attracted the attention of many people. Immediately, there were people who were guessing who the sword god avatar was. He was actually able to withstand the attacks of a rank 6 imperial emperor head-on. Wasn't this a bit too frightening? Ha ha ha, the black gold family's people are actually unable to injure me in the slightest. Instead, their clansmen are continuously dying. If this matter were to spread, everyone in your black gold family would definitely know about it. Chapter 2054. Hearing those words, Zifeng's expression changed. Unfortunately, he was still unable to injure the sword god's clone. This battle continued for a very long time. No one from the Black Gold clan was able to injure the sword god's clone. On the other hand, the sword god's clone was able to rely on his extraordinary abilities to continuously kill the people from the Black Gold clan. In the end, Zifeng ordered everyone to retreat, leaving behind only him and the 3 rank 5 imperial emperors. The battle continued for an entire day. The sword god's clone was like an undefeatable god of war. He continuously fell and stood back up. This caused the surrounding people to be shocked speechless. Was this still a human? On the other side, after an entire day, the black gold ore vein in the devouring space had expanded by quite a bit. The amount of black gold ore it produced was astonishingly large. The cooldown of the divine sword technique had already been restored. At this moment, the sword god's clone's figure suddenly flashed and disappeared. What? Where did he go? Zifeng was shocked. Even he, a rank 6 imperial emperor, was unable to see where the sword god's clone had gone. At this moment, the sword god's clone had already put on the void spirit divine armor and quietly left the battlefield. Then, he suddenly reappeared. Divine sword technique. A heaven-cleaving divine sword instantly appeared and slashed down. SSS. A rank 4 imperial emperor was sliced in two and died miserably on the spot. Everyone was dumbfounded. Before they could react, the sword god's clone had put away the corpse and Tianming. In the next moment, the sword god's clone's aura increased dramatically. Ding! Host made a breakthrough. Host is currently a rank 2 imperial emperor. Finally, after killing so many people, Yixian made a breakthrough. He now possessed the strength to kill rank 5 imperial emperors. However, as the cooldown of the divine sword technique had yet to be restored, he was still unable to kill them. At the same time, the people from the Black Gold clan and Zifeng also understood why Yixian was staying here. It turned out that he was toying with them. Yixian originally had the ability to escape. However, he refused to do so. It turned out that he wanted to make a false accusation. If this continued, the Black Gold clan would likely be annihilated. Who are you? Zifeng immediately stopped and asked. Hearing those words, the sword god's clone smiled. Then, he used the mask to transform into the appearance of the purple gold monarch. Immediately, someone recognized him. Purple gold. Zifeng was astonished. He naturally also recognized Zijin. After all, he was Zijin's older cousin. At the same time, he was also the one who had sealed Zijin. After he had sealed Zijin, he had taken over the position of family head. As his power and strength increased, he had forgotten about Zijin. Who would have thought that Zijin would actually be able to break through the seal and arrive here? Furthermore, his strength had increased. Cousin, Back then when you ambushed me and sealed me, you definitely didn't expect me to see the light of day again, right? The sword god's clone sneered. As soon as these words were spoken, the entire crowd went into an uproar. So it turned out that Jin had been sealed by Feng. No wonder they hadn't seen him all these years. So what if we're out? Feng snorted coldly. Right now, he was the patriarch of the Black Gold family, and at the same time, he was also the strongest person in the Black Gold family. Even if the matter was exposed, so what? It seems that you admit it. However, this fact shouldn't have any effect on you. The sword god's clone smiled and glanced at the people around him. However, it's time for you to pay the price for your actions. You. Feng narrowed his eyes. That's right, me. After the sword god's clone finished speaking, his gaze landed on the 3 rank 5 imperial emperors. Then he said, "Right now, I'll give you all a way to live. As long as you submit to me, you can be spared from death. Otherwise, even Feng will not be able to save you." Once those words were said, the 3 rank 5 imperial emperors glanced at each other. Was this something that a rank 2 imperial emperor could say? A mere rank 2 imperial emperor actually dared to threaten to kill them? He truly did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. However, it was precisely this rank 2 imperial emperor that killed several rank 4 imperial emperors right before their eyes. Most importantly, he had done it when he was a rank 1 imperial emperor. Now that he had broken through to rank 2 imperial emperor, his strength had definitely increased. In an instant, the 3 rank 5 imperial emperors started to hesitate. What a joke. You think you can incite them? Feng said with a face full of confidence. Although these 3 rank 5 imperial emperors were his seniors, they were all nurtured by him. Now, Xian wanted them to change sides. How was that possible? Kill. Before Xian could say anything else, Feng had already attacked. After the 3 rank 5 imperial emperors glanced at each other, they also attacked. Rumble. The sounds of battle began to spread. Every single sound was extremely intimidating. In the beginning, the surrounding Black Gold clansmen all felt that Feng, a rank 6 imperial emperor, would definitely win. However, after an entire day of fighting, they no longer felt that way. Xian had been beaten up for an entire day, yet he was actually not injured at all. This was truly strange. Furthermore, he was actually able to counterattack and kill others. This was simply not something that an ordinary person could do. If they were to continue fighting, there would come a day when all of their clansmen would die. Because of that, some people made a decision. Furthermore, the person who made this decision was one of the 3 rank 5 imperial emperors. Whoosh! Suddenly, the sound of air being torn apart was heard. Following that, a figure fell from the sky. The crowd focused their eyes and saw that the person who had attacked was actually one of the 3 rank 5 imperial emperors. However, the person who had been ambushed did not die. Instead, he was only seriously injured. What was even more frightening was yet to come. The third person actually raised his hand and attacked as well. Crap! When Feng heard the sound of wind, his expression changed greatly. He hurriedly tried to stop them. Unfortunately, he was still a step too late. Rip! A crisp sound was heard. That rank 5 imperial emperor's head was separated from his body. He died on the spot. Seeing this, the corners of Xian's mouth curled up slightly. When the second person attacked, he had already used the death pursuit warrant and the eye of assassination to flash behind his opponent. Once his opponent died, he would be able to directly take away his corpse and heavenly fate. The 2 rank 5 imperial emperors who had attacked had actually already communicated with him and decided to switch sides. Although Feng was capable, he was too cruel. Not to mention those who had been ordered to assassinate him, even ordinary people would not be able to escape death if they made a mistake. They were also afraid that they would be useless to Feng in the future and be killed. Thus, they immediately switched sides to Xian's side. The 2 of you, are you not worthy of the top-quality black gold stones I've given you all these years? Feng was furious. Feng, your dynasty has already passed. You should obediently surrender, shouted one of the rank 5 imperial emperors. You're courting death. Feng opened his eyes wide. He immediately understood the situation he was in. In the beginning, it was him who had led 3 rank 5 imperial emperors to besiege Xian. Now, two rank 5 imperial emperors had switched sides and the third had been ambushed and killed. Chapter 2055. Fortunately, Zifeng had embezzled quite a few top-quality black gold ores over the years. Thus, he was extremely powerful. He was only a step away from becoming a rank 7 imperial emperor. However, Yi Xian's current strength was not weak either. After he obtained that rank 5 imperial emperor's heavenly fate, he immediately devoured it. Although he did not break through to rank 3 imperial emperor, his heavenly fate had increased by several grades. Furthermore, that rank 5 imperial emperor's cosmos ring also contained a large amount of black gold ores and top-quality black gold ores. After all, that rank 5 imperial emperor was one of the top figures of the black gold clan. How could he be poor? Thus, Yi Xian could now use the divine sword technique again. However, he could only use it once. Thus, he wanted to kill Zifeng in a single strike. In an instant, Yi Xian joined forces with the other two rank 5 imperial emperors and fought against Zifeng. If it were only those two rank 5 imperial emperors, they would definitely not be Zifeng's match. However, one must not forget that the old tree and black horn were capable of unlimited resurrection. Thus, they also joined the battle. In the beginning it was 3 against 1. Now it was 5 against 1. This greatly reduced the pressure. Not only that, but the sword god's clone wearing the void spirit divine armor was also very difficult to deal with. He would occasionally appear behind Zifeng and launch sneak attacks. This gave Zifeng a headache. In the beginning, they fought for an entire day. Now, Zifeng was facing these people's attacks. The speed of his consumption of heavenly fate was dozens of times faster than yesterday. If this continued, the consequences would be unimaginable. You all want me to die? Since that's the case, I'll drag you all down with me. Zifeng shouted angrily. His aura suddenly surged. Ordinary people would be able to recover if they only used heavenly fate to fight. However, Zifeng was currently burning his heavenly fate. In other words, he was continuously lowering his cultivation to obtain a powerful boost. In an instant, the situation was reversed. The two of you retreat. We'll block them. The sword god's clone shouted. Then he, the old tree and black horn charged forward. Apart from that, the black gold sword attendants also appeared. After a day of recovery, the war god's mount skill could also be used. The sword god's clone immediately used it. A black bone dragon was summoned out of thin air. An aura of death instantly spread, causing the surrounding people to feel suffocated. Ding! Wings of death successfully summoned. A system notification sounded in Yi Xian's mind. What surprised Yi Xian was that the black bone dragon that he summoned this time wasn't a silver or gold ranked one. Instead, it was a platinum mount that surpassed gold grade. This strength was not simple at all. Following the appearance of the wings of death, Zifeng's expression had already sunk to rock bottom. It seemed like they were in trouble. I don't believe that I will lose here. Zifeng roared furiously and fought with all his might. Unfortunately, 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. Yi Xian had more people on his side. Other than the 2 rank 5 imperial emperors, the sword god's clone, the black gold sword attendants, the wings of death, the old tree and black horn were all not easy to deal with. Even the others could see that Zifeng's momentum was gone. Sure enough, after the wings of death appeared, Zifeng was suppressed. He had to use heaven's will to protect himself in case something unexpected happened. In the end, he decided to give it his all and directly transformed into his original form. He had jumped into the pit by himself. Main body? You are courting death. The sword god's clone's eyes lit up. He directly transformed Wei Zhentian into the beast god Bell. In an instant, Zifeng's strength decreased by 80%. What? Zifeng was a little confused. If he transformed into his original form, his strength would have increased. But now, why did it decrease by so much? Before he could react, a heaven-cleaving divine sword slashed down on his head. Swoosh! In an instant, Zifeng was cut in half by the sword. As long as the divine sword technique could injure the enemy, even if it was just a scratch, it would trigger the one-hit kill effect. Not to mention, Zifeng was cut in half? Ding! Host has completed the chain random mission. Reward: God of War Mount Guaranteed Summon. Gold grade. With Zifeng's death, a system notification sounded in Yi Xian's mind again. Hearing this, Yi Xian's eyes lit up. The god of war mount skill had a guaranteed summon, and it was gold grade? This meant that in the future, when he used the god of war mount skill, he would exclude ordinary mounts and even silver grade mounts. At the very least, he would be able to summon a gold grade mount. This was too awesome. At that moment, Yi Xian quickly kept Zifeng's body and Tianming, and then devoured them. Zifeng's Tianming was very close to becoming a 7th grade imperial emperor. After devouring him, Yi Xian broke through to become a 3rd grade imperial emperor. With his current strength, even if everyone here worked together, they might not be able to defeat him. From now on, Zijin will be your clan leader. At that moment, the sword god's clone suddenly said. This sentence stunned the surrounding people. Zijin, aren't you Zijin? Before the crowd could react, the sword god's clone released Zijin. At that moment, the crowd realized that the sword god's clone was in disguise. No wonder his strength was so strong. Then, Yi Xian did not care about the others. He directly ordered Blackhorn and Old Tree to put the entire Black Gold clan into the devouring space. Such a huge clan gave Yi Xian a lot of convenience. For example, he had an 8-star genius. Ding! Host has completed the 7th round of the sect chain mission. Reward: double the speed of the devouring space. The system notification sounded. Yi Xian could not remember how fast the devouring space was. In any case, one day in the outside world was more than 17,000 years in the devouring space. Double the speed of the devouring space did not mean that it would be 35,000 years, but more than 50,000 years. This was because it was double the speed of the devouring space, not double the speed of the devouring space. Now, one day in the outside world was 50,000 years in the devouring space. Although this was not very useful to those who lived in the devouring space, their lifespan was actually calculated according to the time in the outside world. To put it simply, their lifespan was 50,000 times longer than others of the same level. Not only that, but it also greatly increased the production capacity of the devouring space. As for the 8th round of the sect chain mission, it required 108-star geniuses. Moreover, they had to be eternal emperors. This mission was many times more difficult than the previous one. However, the more difficult the mission, the more generous the reward. It has already increased to more than 50,000 times. I wonder when Lualua will wake up? At that moment, Yi Xian suddenly remembered something. Lualua had fallen into a deep slumber. He wondered how powerful Lualua would be after she became a stage 2 heavenly loathing fox. He would think about this later. Chapter 2056. However, with Yi Xian's breakthrough, the cooldown of the divine sword art increased as well. With Yi Xian's current wealth, it just so happened that the cooldown of the divine sword technique had been restored and he could use it again. At this moment, Yi Xian's attention suddenly fell on something. It was a yellow stone with a seal on it. However, after searching Zifeng's corpse, he found that it was an eternal fate stone. When half-step sovereign emperors and sovereign emperors died, their fate would leave their bodies and be obtained by someone else. However, if an eternal sovereign emperor died, their fate would condense into an eternal fate stone. To put it simply, this eternal destiny stone was formed from the fate of an eternal emperor realm expert. What the F***ck? Yi Xian was so shocked that he couldn't speak. Even if it was only a grade 1 eternal fate stone, it was at least a 67th rank fate stone. If Yi Xian devoured this eternal fate stone, his cultivation would advance by leaps and bounds. At the very least, he could become a 7th rank sovereign emperor, 8th rank sovereign emperor, or even 9th rank sovereign emperor. If the owner of this eternal fate stone wasn't a 1st rank sovereign emperor, Yi Xian could break through and become a 1st rank sovereign emperor. However, there was a seal on this eternal fate stone. This seal was probably placed by an eternal sovereign emperor. Zifeng is really pitiful. He obtained a priceless eternal fate stone by chance, but he can only watch as it's taken away. Yi Xian shook his head helplessly. Breaking the seal on this eternal fate stone was impossible for an ordinary person. However, one couldn't forget that Yi Xian had an extremely powerful trump card. The divine sword art. He immediately used his saint energy to lift the eternal fate stone into the air, then used the divine sword art. A heaven splitter divine sword appeared and slashed down. Yi Xian's control was pretty good. This divine sword just so happened to break the seal on the eternal destiny stone and didn't cause any damage to it. Previously, he had always used the sky splitter divine sword to kill his enemies. However, this time, He was using it to break the seal. However, this was definitely worth it. After the seal on the Eternal Destiny Stone was broken, Xian quickly put it away and devoured it. Ding! The Eternal Fate Stone's grade is too high. Host cannot consume it. To Xian's surprise, the stone couldn't be devoured. How high was this level? This Eternal Fate Stone definitely doesn't belong to a rank 1 Eternal Emperor. It's probably even higher. Xian's eyes lit up. Although he couldn't devour it now, he could in the future. There was no rush. As a result, Xian directly threw the Eternal Destiny Stone into his devouring space and didn't bother with it anymore. Now that the matter had been settled, all he needed to do was to return to the Zijin clan and absorb the entire Zijin clan into his devouring space. However, at this moment, Xian suddenly raised his brows and hurriedly sank his mind into the devouring space. He saw that the Eternal Destiny Stone that he had broken the seal and thrown into the devouring space had suddenly taken the initiative to fly to Luo Luo's side. Then, the Eternal Fate Stone began to melt, turning into countless fates that entered Luo Luo's body. After absorbing the fates, Luo Luo's aura surged, but she didn't wake up. If it had been anyone else, Xian would have stopped it. However, it was Luo Luo who was changing. Moreover, it seemed to be a good sign, so he simply watched. Luo Luo managed to absorb the Eternal Fate Stone that even the devouring system couldn't devour? Xian raised an eyebrow in disbelief. However, he knew that as long as Luo Luo absorbed the Eternal Fate Stone, her cultivation would definitely reach the Eternal Emperor level. Right now, 1 day in the outside world was equivalent to 50,000 years in the devouring space. As such, Luo Luo only took half a minute to absorb the Eternal Fate Stone. Half a minute later, the Eternal Destiny Stone was completely absorbed. Not a single drop was left. Luo Luo's aura had already reached the Eternal Emperor level. Ha ha! Xian couldn't help but laugh. At that moment, Luo Luo, who had been sleeping for many years, finally opened her sleepy eyes and woke up. Xian immediately let Luo Luo out. He smiled and said, "Little girl, you really can sleep." "Young master, long time no see." Luo Luo giggled. Although it had only been a few months in the outside world, it had been almost 1,000,000 years in the devouring space since she had last fallen asleep. "Little girl, your cultivation level is much higher than mine as soon as you wake up. How do you feel?" Xian asked. "Very good. I'm many times stronger than before." Luo Luo nodded and said, "Moreover, my bloodline is boiling. It's very lively. I don't know why." "You must have just woken up. You'll be fine after a while," Xian said. However, right after he finished saying those words, the sky above him suddenly cracked open. A golden light descended and enveloped Luo Luo. "What?" Xian raised his eyebrows. "What's going on?" "Young master, I can't move my body. I feel like I'm about to ascend." "There's also a voice calling out to me," Luo Luo said in surprise. Xian was surprised. "What's that voice?" "I don't know. It seems like it wants to bring me to the 9th heaven." Luo Luo shook her head. The 9th heaven. Xian was shocked when he heard those 3 words. He was currently at the 5th heaven. Above him was the 6th heaven, followed by the 7th and 8th heaven. The 9th heaven was above the 8th heaven. It was the last heaven. Who was calling out to Luo Luo? "Young master, I think I'm about to be brought up," Luo Luo said hurriedly. Xian immediately used the devouring space to envelop Luo Luo. However, he was surprised to find that he couldn't absorb her this time. Where did this golden light come from? Before Xian could react, Luo Luo followed the golden light and began to ascend rapidly. "Stop!" Xian shouted angrily and quickly followed. However, Luo Luo soon reached the end of the 5th heaven. Then, she rose into the dark night sky. Xian was blocked by the closing crack. "Luo Luo!" Xian shouted in his heart. Unexpectedly, Luo Luo didn't reply. As a mere 3rd-grade Imperial Emperor, he didn't have the ability to break through the 5th heaven. Moreover, Luo Luo was being taken away by a 9th heaven expert. Even if his strength increased by 10,000 times, he wouldn't be able to catch up. Fortunately, he could still sense Luo Luo's location. However, the distance between them was increasing at a terrifying speed. Chapter 2057. F***CK. Who is it? Yi Xian could not help but curse. At this moment, he was extremely furious because he was unable to save Luoluo. He could only watch as Luoluo was taken away. Most importantly, he did not know who the other party was. If it was someone with ill intentions, wouldn't he be in trouble? Damn it! Yi Xian sensed the distance between him and Luoluo and made a decision in his heart. He had to break through quickly and kill his way to the 9th heaven. Merely, he was currently only a rank 2 Imperial Emperor. Above Imperial Emperors were Eternal Emperors. After that, it was said that half-step ruler. He only had the memories of the 7th heaven. He did not even know what the 8th heaven was like, let alone the 9th heaven. However, right at this moment, Brat, is the Zijin clan nearby? Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice entered Yi Xian's ears. Yi Xian turned around and saw a middle-aged man looking at him. The latter's aura was actually that of a rank 6 Imperial Emperor. That's right. Yi Xian nodded. Very well, bring me there. The middle-aged man said in a commanding tone. You want to order me around with just a sentence? Earlier, when Luoluo was taken away by the mysterious person, Yi Xian was very angry. Now that someone who was not afraid of death had come to him, how could he not take this opportunity to flip out? How dare a mere rank 3 Imperial Emperor speak to me like this? The middle-aged man shouted angrily. Unexpectedly, Yi Xian directly attacked. Whoosh! The sound of wind suddenly came from behind, causing the middle-aged man's body to tremble. In the next instant, his head was separated from his body. This person had truly come at the wrong time. He just happened to bump into him. Yi Xian quickly put away the corpse and heavenly fate. Then he began to search his soul. It turned out that this middle-aged man was ordered to find the patriarch of the Black Gold clan, Zi Feng. However, the Black Gold clan was nowhere to be found, so he came to the Zijin clan. He came from a peak city in the 5th heaven. The Black Gold clan used to exchange black gold stones for other resources, such as heavenly fate stones. So I can use black gold to exchange for destiny stones. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed as he immediately headed towards the top city called Heaven Martial City. The Black Gold tribe was not very far from the Heaven Martial City. Yi Xian spent 5 days to arrive at the Black Gold tribe. At the same time, in these 5 days, the black gold vein in the devouring space had begun to take shape, producing a lot of black gold Oregon. He immediately entered the Heaven Martial City and went straight to the City Lord Mansion. Yi Xian had sold all of the black gold stones and supreme quality black gold stones for destiny stones, leaving only a few for backup. 5 days ago, after he devoured that middle-aged man's destiny stone, he was already on the verge of making a breakthrough. Now that he had obtained a large amount of destiny stones, he directly broke through to rank 4 Imperial Monarch. However, in the battle earlier, he had used the Divine Sword technique multiple times and exhausted a large amount of black golden stones. Otherwise, he might have been able to break through to rank 5 Imperial Lord. However, right at this moment, suddenly, a group of black figures appeared from the horizon. They quickly approached the Heaven Martial City. When the Heaven Martial City's City Lord sensed them, he immediately leaped into the sky. Who are you? The Heaven Martial City's City Lord was a rank 9 Imperial Lord. He could be considered to be an overlord in the 5th heaven. This time, although there were only 50 people heading for the Martial Heaven City, all of them were experts. All of them were high-level Imperial Emperors. Without saying anything, they directly launched a concentrated attack at the Heaven Martial City's City Lord. It's the Marauder Squad. The Heaven Martial City's City Lord's expression changed. He immediately reacted and shouted. The Marauder Squad was a squad that specialized in killing others and plundering their destiny stones to rapidly increase their strength. Wherever they passed, not a single blade of grass would grow. They would practically massacre the entire city. The arrival of this Marauder Squad caught the attention of the Heaven Martial City. Immediately, the experts from the City Lord's mansion rushed out to meet them. As the City Lord's mansion, they naturally had to shoulder the heavy responsibility of protecting the city. However, this time around, the City Lord's mansion was slightly powerless. The reason for that was because this Marauder Squad was from the 6th heaven. There were 2 rank 9 Imperial Lords in this Marauder Squad. The City Lord is no match for them. Everyone quickly help them. Immediately, the citizens of the Heaven Martial City all acted. If the City Lord were to die, their Heaven Martial City would likely be destroyed. Not many people would be able to survive. In this sort of situation, They had to be of one mind to face the enemy together. Yi Xian just so happened to encounter this good show. However, he did not immediately act. Instead, he watched from the sidelines. This marauder squad was very powerful. The weakest among them was a rank 7 Imperial Lord. It was already not something that he could interfere with. However, he could still fish in troubled waters. Immediately, he released the black gold sword attendants, Old Tree and Black Horn. Of course, the Yi Xian who was in the Heaven Martial City was not his actual body. Instead, it was only his sword god clone. Thus, he was not worried at all. Rumble! In the sky above the Heaven Martial City, a world-shaking battle unfolded. A total of 1,000 people participated in the battle. However, right at this moment, a battle broke out in the Heaven Martial City. Battles also broke out in the Heaven Martial City. Some people with bad intentions took advantage of the chaos to kill others and steal their treasures. Yi Xian did not bother to pay attention to them. After all, he was not a saint. There was no need for him to act like a saint in this world where the strong were respected. His attention was completely focused on the battle in the sky. The time has come. Attack! Yi Xian's eyes flashed. He immediately gave the order. Immediately, the sword god clone and the others all moved out. They activated plundering mode. Their main goal was to obtain cosmos rings and heavenly wills. The sword god clone possessed the void spirit divine armor. Adding on the eyes of assassination, his plundering speed was astonishingly fast. In the blink of an eye, he had obtained several cosmos rings and 2 rank 5 Imperial Lord heavenly wills. This battle would definitely result in disastrous casualties. If his luck was good, Yi Xian might be able to break through to rank 5 Imperial Lord. However, there were also quite a few people who had the same idea as Yi Xian. In an instant, a conflict occurred in the Heaven Martial City. It turned into a great battle. Yi Xian did not care too much. As there were already people from the Heaven Martial City that were attacking him, his eyes flashed. He directly ordered Old Tree and the others to stand in position. Then, he used his trump card. Divine Sword Technique. A heaven-cleaving divine sword appeared and directly slashed down. Some people were unable to dodge in time and were directly killed. Then, their corpses and heavenly wills were instantly collected. Among them, there was even a rank 7 Imperial Lord from the plundering squad. Unfortunately, Yi Xian was still unable to make a breakthrough in his cultivation. As the people from the Heaven Martial City were not united, they were soon scattered by the plundering squad. Then, the Heaven Martial City's city master was besieged and killed. Right before the Heaven Martial City's city master died, Yi Xian used the eyes of assassination and appeared behind him. However, he was immediately sent flying by a rank 9 Imperial Lord the moment he appeared. Chapter 2058. What audacity! You actually dare to covet my things? You're courting death. A rank 9 Imperial Emperor from the bandit group was enraged. He was prepared to beat the shit out of the sword god's clone. However, after attacking for a while, he was unable to do anything to the sword god's clone. The sword god's clone could not be bothered to pay attention to him. He continued to use the eyes of assassination and flashed behind other people. This method allowed him to obtain quite a few good things. Unfortunately, the people that died were all from the Heaven Martial City. Their cultivation was not higher than rank 6 Imperial Emperors. Thus, he did not obtain much. Soon, the people from the Heaven Martial City were slaughtered to the point that they threw away their armor and fled. Seeing this, the people from the Heaven Martial City also left. After today, there would likely be no more Heaven Martial City. However, right at this moment, suddenly, the 5th heaven was torn open. An old man stepped on golden light and descended. His appearance caused the bandit group to stop. No, it should be the oppressive might emitted by the old man that caused everyone to be unable to move. Apart from the sword god's clone, no one was able to escape. Oh, interesting. The old man raised his brows. His gaze landed on the sword god's clone. Then he looked away. The sword god's clone glanced at him. He was slightly shocked. This old man came from the 6th heaven. Furthermore, he possessed the ability to tear apart the 5th heaven. He was at least an eternal Imperial Emperor. What did he want to do in the 5th heaven? At this moment, the old man continued. A few days ago, an abnormal change occurred in this region. A golden light tore apart the 5th heaven. Did anyone see that? Once those words were said, Everyone was stunned. However, Yi Xian raised his brows when he heard those words. Golden light tore apart the fifth heaven. Wasn't that the guiding golden light from the ninth heaven? At that time, that guiding golden light had brought Luo Luo away. Yi Xian was present. But why was this old man investigating this? If anyone saw it, tell me and I'll reward you greatly. The old man added. However, no one answered him. Helpless, the old man could only wave his hand and gather the countless people from the heaven martial city. Following that, the large sack in his hand suddenly enlarged in size and sucked everyone into it. This time, even the sword god's doppelganger was not spared and was directly sucked into the magic treasure. Of course, it was Yi Xian who took the initiative. The sword god doppelganger had an invincible body. Unless it was attacked, the effects of pressure were useless against it. Yi Xian took the initiative to enter this transcendent artifact because he wanted to see what the other party was up to. If he wanted to leave, he could just recall the sword god avatar. What is this old man trying to do? Yi Xian thought to himself. At this time, the people who had been taken into the bag were all confined in a small array. After an unknown period of time, the bag opened again, and a large number of people came in. It must be understood that there were millions of people in Sky Martial City, all of whom were at least at the Samsara Dao Lord level. It was Yi Xian's first time seeing a magic treasure that could take in so many people other than his own devouring space. This old man had run all over the area. As long as there was a living thing, he would capture it. Yi Xian seemed to understand what the old man was doing. The old man was probably going to bring everyone back and search their souls one by one. Just like that, a month passed. A month later, a gust of wind suddenly blew in the bag and blew everyone out. After Yi Xian landed, he looked around and found that there were countless people around him. This number was probably more than 10 billion. Any imperial emperor would be able to sense a place countless miles away. With so many people gathered together, they would be able to sense it. This was probably just the tip of the iceberg. At this time, everyone was suppressed to the point that they could not move, and a few figures stood in the air. The old man who had taken Yi Xian away spoke slowly. Everyone, let me introduce myself first. I am the sect master of the sixth heaven Khanate Gate. I invited everyone here to investigate a matter. Since everyone said that they did not see it, I will search your souls one by one. Without another word, the Khanate Gate sect master sucked one of the people over and began the soul search. The soul search was not long, only a second. But don't forget that there were countless people here. If he wanted to search their souls one by one, who knew how long it would take? Not to mention everyone, even if there were 100 million people, it would take at least 3 years to complete the soul search. Not to mention, there were hundreds of millions of people here. After thinking for a while, Yi Xian used the divine devouring space to create something. It was a floating image crystal that he had extracted from his memory. It was the scene of Luo Luo's ascension. However, since this floating image crystal was extracted from his memory, it could be modified by the divine devouring space. He modified the scene to be the scene of Luo Luo's ascension by chance, while he had only seen it by chance. Immediately he began to think. Previously, the Khanate Gate sect master said that there would be a reward if he told him the situation. But what kind of reward would it be? After a while, Yi Xian made up his mind and decided to hand over the floating image crystal. Perhaps, this Khanate Gate sect master had something to do with the golden light that led to Luo Luo's departure. Immediately he said, "Senior, this junior has a floating image crystal that you will definitely be interested in." What? Hearing this, the Khanate Gate sect master raised an eyebrow and said, "Let me see." Then, Yi Xian tossed the floating image crystal over and the Khanate Gate sect master scanned it. "As expected," muttered the Khanate Gate sect master. Then, in a flash, he appeared in front of Yi Xian and asked, "Do you know this young lady who ascended?" "This junior doesn't know her. This junior happened to pass by and saw this scene," replied Yi Xian. "But I saw that she seemed to be talking to you?" asked the Khanate Gate sect master. "Yes, she was asking me for help. But this junior is too weak to do anything." Yi Xian shook his head and said. The Khanate Gate sect master fell silent. That day, he had also seen that golden light. However, that golden light had broken through from the seventh heaven. It had directly pierced through the sixth heaven, and then picked up a person. So, he wanted to investigate this matter. However, he couldn't find any clues. Sigh, I thought too much. The seventh heaven is still too far away from us. The sect leader of the pre-celestial sect shook his head, then tossed a stone to Xian and said, I see that you're a talent for being able to withstand my pressure. From now on, you can cultivate under my sect. Xian took the stone and looked at it. He couldn't help but gasp. Chapter 2059. Thank you, Sect Master. Xian hurriedly thanked him. Then the experts of the Innate Heaven sect sent these people back. Of course, most of them were willing to stay in the Innate Heaven sect. If they were given a choice between the fifth heaven and the Innate Heaven sect, many of them would choose to stay in the Innate Heaven sect. Even though the Innate Heaven sect was the weakest of the sixth heaven sects, its foundation was not something the fifth heaven sects could compare to. The opportunities in the sixth heaven were much better than in the fifth heaven. For example, although the sect master of the Innate Heaven sect was unknown, he was at least an eternal emperor. In the fifth heaven, there were only a few eternal emperors, and each of them controlled a region. There was not much room for improvement. Then, Xian was brought to the Innate Heaven sect by an eternal emperor expert. Xian's aptitude was just right to become an outer disciple. After everything was arranged, Xian turned his attention to the Eternal Fate Stone. He did not know what grade the previous Eternal Fate Stone was. It was too high, so he could not devour it. However, he could sense that this Eternal Fate Stone was lower than the previous one. Devour. Without another word, Xian gave it a try. Ding! Host has devoured an Eternal Fate Stone. Ding! Host has broken through. Host is now a 7th rank Imperial Emperor. The system notified. A 7th rank Imperial Emperor had surpassed Zi Feng. This time he had not come in vain. He had increased 3 levels in one go. However, as his cultivation level increased, those black gold stones were useless. Only the black gold stones were of some use. Next, he had to plan a new path. His first goal was to break through. Only by breaking through could he find Luo Luo quickly and beat up the mysterious person who had taken her away. If he wanted to increase his cultivation level, it was simple. He just had to keep stealing. However, Xian felt that this method was not feasible, so he thought about it. At this time, he happened to pass by the Innate Heaven Sect's training hall. There were many missions inside. He went in to take a look and really found a suitable mission for him. This mission was to kill an Eternal Emperor-level holy beast and bring back its corpse. The reason this mission attracted Xian's attention was because of the sacred beast called the Undying Phoenix. The Undying Fire Seed within the Undying Phoenix was a necessity to activate the Undying Sword Servant. As long as Xian activated the Sword Servant of the Undead, he would have the ability to rise from the ashes once. Eternal Emperor level? That's nothing. Xian raised an eyebrow. In the previous battle in Heaven Martial City, his divine sword technique had already recovered, so he could still use it once. In addition, given his current realm, he should be able to kill an Eternal Emperor-level Undying Phoenix. He immediately left the Innate Heaven Gate and headed for the Undying Flame Mountain. A few days later, he arrived at the Undying Flame Mountain. The temperature here was terrifyingly high because these were the undying flames left behind by the Undying Phoenix. Even if there was nothing to burn, this flame could continue to burn. The Undying Flame Mountain was very famous in this area. Very few people who entered could come out alive. As his original body was still in the fifth heaven, Xian sent his sword god clone in to investigate. These terrifying undying flames were completely useless against the sword god avatar. However, the Undying Flame Mountain was very barren. After the sword god clone entered, he did not see any other living things. However, on the second day after he entered the Undying Flame Mountain, he suddenly heard a series of loud sounds. Rumble! Hearing this sound, Xian raised an eyebrow and hurried over to take a look. Sure enough, someone was fighting the Undying Phoenix of the Undying Flame Mountain. Xian focused his eyes and saw that it was 3 youths besieging the Undying Phoenix. These 3 people were only 9th grade Imperial Emperors, but they were very strong among their peers. Therefore, when the 3 of them joined forces, they were able to fight the Undying Phoenix to a draw. At this moment, the 3 of them noticed Xian. One of them shouted, "If you don't want to die, scram." Xian was only a 7th grade Imperial Emperor right now. He was simply not worthy of their attention. However, that person's tone caused Xian to feel extremely displeased. If I don't teach you all a lesson, how can I be called Xian? Yi Xian raised an eyebrow. Ever since Lua was kidnapped for no reason, his emotions had fluctuated greatly. To put it simply, these three people were courting death. Immediately, Old Tree, Black Horn and the Black Gold Sword attendants charged toward them. Not only that, the sword god clone flashed behind them and ruthlessly slashed down with his sword. Clang! A crisp sound was heard. The sword god clone's sword landed on the Undying Phoenix's armor. Eternal Emperor artifact? Yi Xian was stunned. It seemed that these three guys had some background. They actually had an Eternal Emperor artifact. Previously, the supreme-grade black gold stone he obtained in the fifth heaven could only be used to forge a middle-grade Emperor artifact. It could not even be used to forge a high-grade Emperor artifact, let alone an Eternal Emperor artifact. However, it was not that easy to block Yi Xian's attack with an Eternal Emperor artifact. Don't forget that these three people were provoking the Undying Phoenix. When the Undying Phoenix saw that Yi Xian was helping it naturally would not attack Yi Xian. Originally, the three people's combat strength was on par with the Undying Phoenix. However, with the addition of Yi Xian and the others, they instantly fell into a deadlock. Bastard, do you know who we are? The young man spoke again. Even if your father is the king of heaven, you will still die today. Yi Xian widened his eyes and attacked with all his might. No matter how powerful the Eternal Emperor artifact was, it could not block so many attacks. After all, the Eternal Emperor artifact needed the blessing of the heavens, and the heavens needed the support of the saint power. In the face of such a powerful attack, their saint power was rapidly depleted. Soon they were running out. Let's go. The young man in the lead glanced at Yi Xian and shouted in a low voice. It's not that easy to leave. Stay here. Yi Xian's eyes flashed. A divine sword suddenly appeared out of thin air and slashed horizontally. Rip! Although they were wearing Eternal Emperor artifacts, they were still as fragile as tofu in the face of the Heaven Splitter divine sword. Yi Xian used this sword to directly kill two people. What a terrifying attack! The young man in the lead was shocked when he saw this. Even an Eternal Emperor could not kill two people in a row, let alone Yi Xian, who was only a 7th-grade Imperial Emperor. What a joke! Before he could react, the Undying Phoenix on the other side spat out a mouthful of undying flames. The saint power in his body was rapidly depleted. In the end, it was exhausted. No, I'm from the Iceblade Villa. I can't die. The young man in the lead roared. Chapter 2060. Soon, the leader could not hold on any longer and was beheaded by the sword god's doppelganger. The universe ring and Tianming fell into the sword god's doppelganger's hands. Then, the sword god's doppelganger quickly devoured Tianming and summoned the beast god Bell. Once the beast god Bell was summoned, the Undying Phoenix's strength decreased by 80%. Moreover, it was injured by the three of them. Coupled with Yi Xian's sword god bloodline, its strength was only slightly stronger than an ordinary 9th-grade Imperial Emperor. In a short while, it was besieged and killed by the sword god's doppelganger. Undying Fire Seed. Yi Xian quickly took out the Undying Huabell from the Undying Phoenix and used it to activate the Undying Swordsman. Ding! The Undying Swordsman has been successfully activated. The system notified. Yi Xian immediately summoned the Undying Swordsman. The Undying Swordsman was wearing white bone armor and a white bone mask that only revealed its eyes. Yi Xian did not know how strong it was. Yi Xian quickly ordered the Undying Swordsman to fight with the Black Gold Swordsman. To his surprise, the Undying Swordsman's strength was on par with the Black Gold Swordsman that had been strengthened many times. No, to be precise, the Undying Swordsman was slightly stronger. That was because the Undying Swordsman had a resurrection skill. However, the Black Gold Swordsman did not share the resurrection skill. Not bad, not bad. Another capable member. Yi Xian nodded in satisfaction. Then, he suddenly glanced at the other swordsmen that had yet to be activated and felt an urge to activate them. Each swordsman was stronger than the last. If all of them were activated, it would be awesome. Especially the 100-beast swordsman, it could summon hundreds of powerful sacred beasts at once. That was not the point. The point was that Yi Xian had another bloodline, the Battle God bloodline. The 100-beast swordsman could summon hundreds of Battle God mounts at once when used with the Battle God mount skill. What the F***CK? Yi Xian had completed the chain random mission and was guaranteed to summon at least a gold grade mount. In other words, As long as the 100-beast swordsman was activated, Yi Xian could summon hundreds of gold-grade mounts at once. Perhaps, there might even be a platinum-grade mount that surpassed gold-grade. TSK. Yi Xian couldn't help but laugh. However, the 100-beast sword attendant was not so easy to activate. It required Yi Xian to kill 100 saint beasts with noble bloodlines. This undying phoenix just so happened to be one of them. Therefore, Yi Xian still needed to kill 99 other holy beasts of the same bloodline before he could be considered a holy beast. This is a tough mission. Yi Xian thought to himself as he took a look at the mission he had obtained from the Xiantian Gate. There were also 3 types of missions to hunt saint beasts, and the bloodlines of these saint beasts were not bad. At that moment, Yi Xian made his move again. However, what he didn't know was that the 3 young men he just killed all had special treasures on them that could record what they saw before they died. Therefore, the scene of Yi Xian killing them had already been sent back to their clans. At this moment, somewhere in the 6th heaven. Bastard! A mere innate heaven gate dares to kill a member of my Ice Sky Mountain Villa? You are courting death. The higher-ups of the Ice Edge Villa were enraged. They immediately sent out their experts and rushed towards the innate heaven gate. Yi Xian, who didn't know about this, was still on his way. Soon, he found the second holy beast, suppressed it with the beast god bell, and killed it. He had already obtained 2 of the 100 bloodlines. Then, he continued on his way. More than 10 days later, he completed all the missions. Then, he prepared to leave and return to the innate heaven gate. After all, he still had rewards for these missions. However, when Yi Xian returned to the innate heaven gate, he found that it was a mess. Corpses were everywhere, and blood flowed like a river. What happened? Yi Xian raised his eyebrows. He had only left for a short time, and the innate heaven gate was annihilated. Wasn't this too bad? He felt that it was a little strange, so he kept all the corpses and searched their souls. After searching, he found out who the culprit was. The people of the Ice Edge Villa massacred the entire innate heaven gate? Yi Xian suddenly recalled that when he was in the Undying Flame Mountain, the young man in the lead said that he was from the Ice Edge Villa. Now, it seemed that the Ice Edge Villa couldn't find him, so they came to the innate heaven gate. In short, he was the source of all this. He was the one who harmed the innate heaven gate. Rest in peace for now. When I am strong enough, I will resurrect you. Yi Xian kept all the corpses of the innate heaven gate and kept them safe. As long as his strength grew in the future, it would be easy to resurrect these people. But now there was one more thing to do, and that was to destroy the Ice Edge Villa. Although he was the one who killed the disciple of the Ice Edge Villa, that person had a foul mouth. In today's world, it was not strange to kill an entire family because of a word. Moreover, this was in the 6th heaven, so it was obviously crueler. Yi Xian immediately rushed in a direction. The Villa Master of the Ice Edge Villa was only a 3rd-grade Eternal Emperor, 5 realms higher than Yi Xian, so the difficulty was not very high. About 7 days later, he arrived outside the Ice Edge Villa. Sword God Clone, go! Without saying a word, he directly sent the Sword God Clone into the Ice Edge Villa. Kill everyone on sight. Anyone who reached the Eternal Emperor level had to die. Immediately, a bloody storm broke out outside the Ice Edge Villa. Which scoundrel dares to act so presumptuously in my Ice Edge Villa? You're courting death. Many people rushed out of the Ice Edge Villa. All of them were Eternal Emperors, but they were only 1st-grade Eternal Emperors. Immediately, Yi Xian's side fought the experts of the Ice Edge Villa. This time, Yi Xian came with the intention of destroying the Ice Edge Villa, so he would not show mercy. The Sword God Clone, Undying Swordsman, and Black Gold Swordsman blocked the Ice Edge Villa's Eternal Emperors. As for the Old Tree and Black Horn, they dealt with the others. War God Mount. In order to increase efficiency, the Sword God Clone used a big move and summoned a gold-grade mount. This time, it was the Golden Behemoth. Boom! This was a colossal creature that was 100,000 meters tall. With a casual stomp, it could trample many people to death. Balls of heavens will floated out of the corpses and were devoured by the Old Tree and Black Horn. Then, the balls of heavens were devoured by Yi Xian. Although his realm did not increase, Yi Xian's will of heaven's will was constantly rising, so his strength was also soaring. At this time, the Sword God Clone suddenly used a trump card that he had never used before. War God Domain. As soon as this skill was used, the entire world froze. At this time, the only one who could move was Yi Xian's side, and another first-grade Eternal Emperor. Chapter 2061. During the duel, the entire world was forbidden. The two would decide the victor in the God of War domain. If the Sword God clone won, he would temporarily gain a boost in strength. But if he lost, the Sword God clone and Yi Xian would permanently lose 10% of their combat strength. Yi Xian could only use this skill when he was determined to win. Although it was impossible for the Sword God clone to lose, there was a time limit to the God of War domain. Once the time was up, he would lose. But that wasn't the point. The point was that the Old Tree, Black Horn, Undying Sword Servants, Black Gold Sword Servants, and Golden Behemoth could all move. Simply put, it was a gang fight. What's going on? The Ice Edge Villa's Eternal Emperor was shocked. He saw that everyone else had stopped moving. Even the sword chi that pierced through the air was the same. However, he and his enemies were still able to move. What was going on? Before he could react, the Sword God clone and the others launched an attack. Although he was an Eternal Emperor, 2 fists were no match for 4. Soon, he was killed by the Sword God clone. Ding! Host has obtained the Invincible God of War effect. As the system notification sounded, the strength of Yi Xian and his subordinates all skyrocketed. His killing speed had also increased by several folds. Impudent! At this moment, a roar suddenly came from the sky. The Sword God clone turned around and saw several powerful auras rushing toward him. The higher-ups of the Ice Edge Villa are finally here? The Sword God clone looked and found that he had seen 2 of them in the memories of the innate Heaven sect disciples. These 2 second-stage Imperial Emperors were the murderers who had slaughtered the entire innate Heaven sect. I finally found you. Dang! Yi Xian was furious. He directly ordered the Sword God clone to attack. In an instant, he flashed behind one of them and slashed with his sword. Unfortunately, the other party had an Eternal Emperor weapon and was a second-stage Imperial Emperor. Even with the Invincible God of War effect, he couldn't break through the other party's defense. Humph! The other party snorted and turned around to send the Sword God clone flying. Right now, the Sword God's avatar was unable to break through the opponent's defense. However, things were different now. At that moment, several rank 1 Imperial Emperors had already died, and Yi Xian had obtained their Eternal Fate Stones. After devouring, he would break through. Ding! Host has made a breakthrough. Host is now a rank 8 Imperial Monarch. Once a cultivator made a breakthrough, their strength would increase exponentially. Now that Yi Xian was only 3 levels away from his opponent, he should be able to pose a threat to him. Die! Seeing that his opponent was unscathed, the rank 2 Eternal Emperor struck out with his sword again. However, before the sword chi could pierce through the air, the Eternal Emperor weapon in his hand suddenly exploded. Sword burst. Bang! The Eternal Emperor weapon exploded into countless fragments, directly killing the weaker Imperial Emperors below. And this was just an appetizer. Make the storm worse. Yi Xian's eyes flickered. In the next moment, the Emperor weapons and Eternal Emperor weapons all exploded. Sharp whistling sounds rang out. In an instant, almost all of the people from Ice Edge Villa below were killed. At the same time, among the group of people in the air, only the long sword in the hand of the Villa Master of Ice Edge Villa was intact. After all, it was the treasure of Ice Edge Villa. Bastard! I'll definitely kill you. Ice Edge Villa Master was furious. Just that blow alone had killed several rank 1 Eternal Emperors of Ice Edge Villa. As for the Imperial Emperors, they had lost countless of them. With his cultivation level, it was easy for him to resurrect those Imperial Emperors. However, even he would have to pay a huge price to resurrect a rank 1 Eternal Emperor. Haha, kill me if you dare. Yi Xian laughed 3 times and flashed behind a rank 2 Eternal Emperor. Crack! A crisp sound rang out. Just now, the Eternal Emperor weapon long sword had exploded and pierced through the Eternal Emperor weapon battle armor. Now, Yi Xian's sword had completely broken through the opponent's defense. Oh no! The rank 2 Eternal Emperor's expression changed drastically and he quickly retreated. At the same time, the 2 rank 2 Eternal Emperors and the Villa Master of Ice Edge Villa attacked together in an attempt to stop Yi Xian's attack. Unfortunately, Yi Xian's attack was impossible to guard against. Whoosh! The Sword God's avatar's figure disappeared and reappeared behind the Grade 2 Eternal Emperor. With a sweep of his sword, the rank 2 Eternal Emperor's head flew up. Dead. A rank 2 Eternal Emperor was very important to Ice Edge Villa. There were only 3 of them in the villa. Now, one of them was dead. Even in Ice Edge Villa, rank 3 Eternal Emperors were not enough to be resurrected. Before the crowd could react, the sword god's doppelganger flashed behind another person and attacked again. Be careful. With the previous example, this person was much smarter than the one who had died. He quickly turned around and slashed at the sword god clone, sending it flying. It was a joke. 3 rank 2 Eternal Emperors and 1 rank 3 Eternal Emperor could not do anything to an rank 8 Eternal Emperor. If news of this spread, they would definitely be laughed at to death. However, if word of this spread, then so be it. After all, by the time this matter spread, the Ice Edge Villa would no longer exist. While the sword god clone was stalling for time, Old Tree, Black Horn, Black Gold Swordsman, Undying Swordsman, and Golden Behemoth were crazily killing. The Black Gold Swordsman could be strengthened with ores and the like, while the Undying Swordsman could be strengthened with heavenly treasures of the death attribute. Because they were in the same realm as Xianxia, the strengthening effect was very obvious. At this moment, WNG lay. Suddenly, a violent roar resounded through the sky. Immediately after, a corpse fell from the sky and disappeared into thin air halfway down. Another rank 2 Eternal Emperor had been killed by the sword god clone. Now, only 1 rank 2 Eternal Emperor and the Villa Master of Ice Edge Villa, a rank 3 Eternal Emperor, were left. As for the rank 1 Eternal Emperors, they were all dead. I'd rather die than live in dishonor. The Villa Master of Ice Edge Villa made a difficult decision with bloodshot eyes. He took out a light blue stone from his interspatial ring and wrapped it with his heaven's will. In the next moment, a snowstorm blew in Ice Edge Villa. Huh! Xianxia raised his eyebrows and felt the surrounding temperature drop sharply. The entire Ice Edge Villa froze in an instant. Not only that, but even the living were the same. What's going on? Xianxia was a little confused. He turned his head and found that the remaining rank 2 Eternal Emperor and the Villa Master of Ice Edge Villa had also turned into ice sculptures. In addition, the Black Gold Swordsman, Undying Swordsman, Old Tree, Black Horn, and the huge Golden Behemoth were also frozen. Except for the sword god clone, everyone was frozen. Chapter 2062. At that moment, Xianxia sent his sword god doppelganger to try it out. He found that his full-powered attack could not break through the layer of ice. Moreover, it could not be swallowed. It seemed that the light blue stone was a good thing. Ding! The flame-engulfing unicorn is sealed by ice and cannot be recalled. Ding! The engulfing black-scaled dragon is sealed by ice and cannot be recalled. Ding! The black gold swordsman is sealed by ice and cannot be recalled. Ding! The immortal swordsman is sealed by ice and cannot be recalled. System notifications rang in Xianxia's mind. This was troublesome. The old tree and the others were frozen, not dead. Otherwise they could be resurrected. However, Xianxia had a way, and that was to use the divine sword technique. At that moment, he landed on the ground. Then, his eyes flashed and he directly used his trump card. Divine sword technique. A divine sword slashed out horizontally. Everything that came into contact with it was as fragile as tofu. This divine sword first killed the old tree and Black Horn, then the Black Gold Swordsman, the Immortal Swordsman, and finally the Villa Master of Ice Edge Villa and the second Great Eternal Emperor. As for the others, Xianxia was too lazy to kill them because their cultivation was too weak. Ding! The flame-engulfing unicorn is resurrected. Ding! The engulfing black-scaled dragon is resurrected. Ding! The Immortal Swordsman is resurrected. System notifications rang. The old tree and Black Horn were magic treasures, so they could be resurrected. The Immortal Swordsman had a passive resurrection, so they could be resurrected. However, the Black Gold Swordsman could not be resurrected, so they could only be summoned again tomorrow. At that moment, Xianxia was collecting the spoils of war. The Ice Edge Villa was also very rich. There were a lot of heavenly treasures in the Villa Master's interspatial ring. Ding! The host has broken through. The host is now a 9th grade Imperial Emperor. Xianxia had gained a lot from this battle. He had broken through twice. At this time, his heavenly fate level had reached 64. He was just a little bit away from becoming an Eternal Emperor. However, things were not over yet. After Xianxia cleaned up the battlefield, a figure suddenly appeared in the sky. This aura was even stronger than that of the Ice Edge Villa's Villa Master. It was most likely a rank 4 Eternal Emperor. Who? Yi Xian was a little surprised. Could it be that the Ice Peak Villa still had a hidden expert? However, even if they were rank 4 Eternal Emperors, they would still take too long to arrive. If it had been before, Yi Xian would have been afraid and would have had no choice but to hide. But now that it had appeared, he was no longer afraid. After this expert arrived, he looked around and asked, "What's going on here?" The sword god avatar was the only living person in front of him, so naturally, he was asking him. "I don't know," Yi Xian replied casually. This sentence made the newcomer a little displeased, but he didn't waste his breath. With a wave of his hand, he dissolved the layer of ice on one of the ice sculptures and began to search their souls. In the next moment, he knew the ins and outs of the matter. "It's you." The newcomer's gaze fell on Yi Xian. From the memories of the person whose soul was searched, he saw that Yi Xian had killed his way into the Ice Edge Villa. The Villa Master and the others were no match for him, so they used the sacred ice stone. "So what if it's me?" Yi Xian raised his eyebrows. "Who are you? How dare you slaughter the forces of my Ice Alliance?" asked the middle-aged man. Ice Alliance. Hearing this name, Yi Xian was stunned for a moment. Then, he quickly searched the souls of the corpses. This was the Ice Mountain Range. There were many forces in this area, and these forces formed the Ice Alliance. This person should be from the Shrine of Ice, the leader of the Ice Alliance. The Ice Edge Villa Master had been holding the sacred ice stone that every subordinate faction's leader had. This thing was usually used when facing a destructive attack. Once it was used, everyone would be sealed in ice. Only a special method could unseal it. If you want to fight, then fight. Why are you asking so many questions? Yi Xian snorted coldly. You're courting death. The middle-aged man was furious. He directly charged at Yi Xian. What a joke. A mere 9th rank Imperial Emperor dared to say such words in front of him. He was courting death. However, in the next moment, he realized that Yi Xian was not courting death. He was truly capable. In an instant, he was attacked by several people. This time, Yi Xian attacked with all his strength. Moreover, his opponent was not a sword cultivator, so his strength was directly reduced by 30%. Before Yi Xian made a breakthrough, he seemed to be able to handle the attacks of so many people with ease. Now that he had made a breakthrough, his strength had undergone a huge change. It would definitely be easier for him to deal with these people. However, it would not be so easy to kill this middle-aged man. Rumble! Immediately, the two of them began to fight. Yi Xian still used a besieging tactic. Old Tree, Black Horn, Deathless Swordsman, and the Sword God's clone attacked from 4 directions. This middle-aged man also had an Eternal Emperor artifact, so Yi Xian could only exhaust him. This battle lasted for a long time. These people, where did they come from? How dare they provoke the Ice Alliance? The middle-aged man thought to himself. He checked his saint power. There was only a third left. In the battle just now, he had continuously killed Old Tree and Black Horn. However, these two could continuously resurrect themselves. They were very difficult to deal with. Moreover, the Deathless Swordsman in the white bone armor was even more terrifying. His attack could corrode the heavenly fate. Go back and inform the palace master. The middle-aged man immediately made up his mind. If it was before, he could directly take out his communication token and report directly to his superiors. However, under the siege of 4 people, he could not find the time to do so. At this moment, Yi Xian saw through his opponent's intention and immediately attacked with all his strength. Sword Intent of Death. The Deathless Swordsman's ghostly fire-like eyes suddenly flickered as he slashed out a terrifying attack. This was the Deathless Swordsman's ultimate move. With Old Tree, Black Horn, and the Sword God's clone restraining him, the middle-aged man could not dodge and was directly hit. Crack! The Eternal Emperor artifact on his body shattered. However, this move did not kill him. It only severely injured him. The middle-aged man shuddered. Then, he used the remaining saint power he had and used his trump card. Journey of Ice. In an instant, the middle-aged man turned into a stream of light and swept into the distance. So fast. The Sword God's clone raised an eyebrow. This scene happened so suddenly that he could not even use the Eye of Assassination. However, the middle-aged man had a death hunt warrant, so he could not escape. Chase. Yi Xian immediately chased after the middle-aged man. At the same time, he also knew that the middle-aged man should be escaping back to the Shrine of Ice, the leader of the Ice Alliance. This chase lasted for a few days. Chapter 2063. However, when Yi Xian met with them again, he realized that they had called for help. At this time, Yi Xian was facing 3 rank 4 Eternal Emperors. "Is this the kid who seriously injured you?" A white-haired old man asked with a frown. He could sense that Yi Xian was only a rank 9 Eternal Emperor. He was not even an Eternal Emperor. How could he seriously injure a rank 4 Eternal Emperor? That's right. This kid's strength is very strange. He destroyed the Ice Edge Villa. The middle-aged man nodded. How is that possible? He's only a rank 9 Eternal Emperor. How could he destroy the Ice Edge Villa? The old man could not believe it. However, it was a fact that the middle-aged man was seriously injured. If he could really injure the middle-aged man, destroying the Ice Edge Villa was nothing. Since that's the case, let's capture him and bring him back to the Palace Master. The old man was ready. The battle was about to start. There was no need to say much about the following scene. Naturally, the Sword God's clone was beaten up by the 3 of them. As for Yi Xian, he was temporarily powerless. However, he still had a plan. In the past few days, his original body had found the teleportation array that led to the 6th heaven and arrived at the 6th heaven. Previously, the Sword God's clone had been brought up by the innate heaven sect master. Therefore, his original body was still in the 5th heaven. Now, he had finally arrived. That was not the main point. The main point was that after he arrived, he used the Void Spirit godly armor to rob the various major powers. Ding! Host's fate has been upgraded to rank 67. Ding! Host has broken through. Host is now a rank 1 Eternal Emperor. Yi Xian suddenly broke through. Although the leap from rank 9 Eternal Emperor to rank 1 Eternal Emperor was not as big as the leap from Samsara Dao Lord to half-step Eternal Emperor, his strength still increased by leaps and bounds. After his breakthrough, his Sword God's clone, Old Tree, Black Horn, Undying Sword Servants, and Black Gold Sword Servants all rose to the rank of Eternal Emperor. Their strength increased by more than 10 times in an instant. What? The 3 people besieging Yi Xian were shocked. What was going on? These people suddenly broke through from rank 9 Eternal Emperor to rank 1 Eternal Emperor. They were shocked. In the next moment, they would have to pay a heavy price for their actions. Gotcha! Suddenly, a crisp sound rang out. The Eternal Emperor weapon on the white-haired old man suddenly shattered and he was killed. Immediately after, another person appeared. Not good, a trip of ice and snow. The middle-aged man's expression changed drastically as he once again used his trump card. But this time, Yi Xian's speed caught up. Gotcha! Gotcha sound. At this moment, the Sword God Avatar's strength was much stronger than before because he had devoured the heaven's will of the old man and the other person. Although he had not broken through to the 2nd grade Eternal Emperor realm, his strength had increased. My Shrine of Ice will never let you get away with this. The middle-aged man knew that he was going to die. Therefore he raised his head and roared. Was the Eternal Emperor. The middle-aged man's head flew up and he died on the spot. And put the... In the blink of an eye, his aura skyrocketed again. Ding! Host made a breakthrough. Host is now a rank 2 Eternal Emperor. The 3 were stewards of the Shrine of Ice. They were worth a lot. After Yi Xian devoured the treasures inside, he made a breakthrough. He then searched the souls of the 3 corpses to get a better understanding of them. The Ice Alliance is led by the Shrine of Ice. They have 13 factions under them. Ice Peak Villa is one of them. Suddenly, a name caught Yi Xian's attention. Divine Ice Stone. There's a Divine Ice Stone in the Shrine of Ice? Yi Xian raised his eyebrows. The Divine Ice Stone was a material required by the sword servants of the 5 elements. In addition, the light blue stone that sealed everyone in ice was formed from the shards of the Divine Ice Stone. It was called the Sacred Ice Stone. Apart from the Shrine of Ice, there were 4 other factions that stood side by side with it. They were the shrines of metal, wood, fire, and earth. Coincidentally, there was a corresponding Divine Ice Stone in each of the 4 shrines. As long as Yi Xian obtained all of them, he would be able to activate the sword servants of the 5 elements, one of the strongest among the sword servants of the Unrivaled. The sword servants of the 5 elements are ranked 5th among the sword servants of the 5 elements. If I can activate them, my strength will increase by leaps and bounds. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes and flew in the direction of the Shrine of Ice. The Shrine of Ice could be considered an overlord. Its palace master was a rank 6 eternal emperor. His strength was not bad. However, this could no longer stop Yi Xian's footsteps. Yi Xian had previously killed 3 stewards of the Shrine of Ice. From their memories, Yi Xian obtained the ice and snow martial art. This martial art was very useful in this world of ice and snow. Its speed was even faster than Wei Zhentian's flying form. 3 days later, Sword God's doppelganger arrived at the Shrine of Ice. With the help of the Mask of Illusion, he assumed the appearance of a middle-aged man and entered the Shrine of Ice. He first went in to wander around and make some inquiries. However, the destruction of Iceblade Villa did not attract the attention of the Shrine of Ice because they thought that the matter had been resolved. Therefore, Yi Xian wanted to use his disguise to get rid of those from the Shrine of Ice one by one. But before that, Yi Xian learned one more thing. In the past, possessing a treasure was a crime. Naturally, it was the same in the 6th heaven. Previously, there were people who had designs on the divine ice stone, but they were all sealed in ice by the palace master of the Shrine of Ice. These people did not die, but were all sealed in ice. 7 rank 5 eternal emperors and dozens of rank 4 eternal emperors. Yi Xian raised his eyebrows. The reason why the palace master of the Shrine of Ice did not kill them and instead left them at the entrance of the Shrine of Ice was to serve as a warning to others not to provoke the Shrine of Ice. Since these people did not die, they were destined to die. This time, Yi Xian wanted to make an example out of them. At this time, Yi Xian had already left the Shrine of Ice and arrived at the entrance. Previously, he thought that the ice sculptures at the entrance were those who had committed a crime and were sealed in ice. But now, it seemed that they were those who had designs on the divine ice stone. 57 ice sculptures. All of them. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth slightly curled up. Among the 57 ice sculptures, 7 of them were rank 5 eternal emperors. If he added the others, it would be enough for him to make another breakthrough. As he had obtained a large amount of good stuff, he could now use the divine sword technique. Sword God's doppelganger found a spot and suddenly used his trump card. Divine sword technique. A heaven splitter suddenly appeared and slashed horizontally. The heaven splitter cut all the ice sculptures in half as if they were tofu. Chapter 2064. In the next moment, Yi Xian put away everyone's corpses. Of course, there was also the most important eternal destiny stone. Ding! Host has made a breakthrough. Host is now a 3rd rank eternal emperor. Yi Xian had made another breakthrough in his cultivation. Earlier, he had planned to use his disguise to kill the members of the Shrine of Ice one by one. But now, it seemed that there was no need for that. The changes here had attracted the attention of those in the Shrine of Ice. Immediately, a bystander reported the matter. In the next moment, the upper echelons of the Shrine of Ice moved out in full force. The one leading them was the Hall Master of the Shrine of Ice. 1 6th rank Eternal Emperor, 5 5th rank Eternal Emperors, and more than 10 4th rank Eternal Emperors. This kind of power was already very shocking. Yi Xian stood at the entrance of the Shrine of Ice. Beside his feet were the blood-stained ice crystals that he had shattered. He just watched quietly. As soon as the upper echelons of the Shrine of Ice appeared, they surrounded Yi Xian. "Xianxia, what are you doing?" shouted an elder of the Shrine of Ice angrily. These ice sculptures were used by the Shrine of Ice to intimidate others. Now that they had been destroyed, wasn't it a slap in the face? Not only that, the one who destroyed the ice sculptures was one of their own. What was going on? Of course, the most important thing was that these Eternal Destiny Stones had all fallen into Xianxia's hands. If a 4th rank Eternal Destiny Stone were to be completely refined, it would be enough for them to break through to the 5th rank Eternal Emperor realm. To put it simply, these Eternal Destiny Stones were very valuable. "Hallmaster, there's no need for these ice sculptures to exist anymore," said Yi Xian. "Why?" asked the Hallmaster of the Shrine of Ice with a frown. "Because the divine ice stone in your hands will fall into my hands," said Yi Xian slowly. "How dare you?" Before he could finish his words, an elder berated Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian, disguised as Xianxia, had been very cautious and conscientious in the Shrine of Ice. So why would he say such words now? But what they didn't know was that this Xianxia was actually Yi Xian in disguise. Even Yang Shua's biological parents couldn't recognize him. Yang Shua, you, a mere rank 4 eternal emperor, dare to covet the divine ice stone? It was at this moment that the Shrine of Ice's chief spoke. Treasures have always belonged to the capable. Hallmaster, I am more capable than you. If you don't give it to me, then who should you give it to? Yi Xian said with narrowed eyes. Bastard, why don't you take a look at yourself first? How dare you say such words? I'll let you know the immensity of heaven and earth. One of the elders roared and rushed towards Yi Xian. A rank 5 eternal emperor would have been very difficult for Yi Xian in the past. However, now that he was a rank 3 eternal emperor, he was not afraid at all. In the blink of an eye, he used Assassin's Eye and flashed behind his opponent. Kacha! With a crisp sound, the elder's eternal emperor weapon shattered. Not only that, but his head was also cleaved open, instantly killing him. Of the 5 great rank 5 eternal emperors in the Shrine of Ice, only 4 were left. Everyone present was shocked. Xianxia, how dare you? How dare you? Immediately, an elder shouted angrily. Yang Shua, the steward of the Shrine of Ice, was a rank 4 eternal emperor. Although he was not very strong, he still had some weight in the Shrine of Ice. However, today, he actually killed an elder with his own hands? Before the elder could finish his words, Yi Xian's figure flashed again and appeared behind him. Kacha! Another crisp sound was heard, and the elder's head was sent flying. Another destiny fell into Yi Xian's hands. Now, there were only 3 great rank 5 eternal emperors left in the Shrine of Ice. You're courting death. The Shrine of Ice was furious. Every rank 5 eternal emperor was the foundation of the Shrine of Ice. Now that 2 of them had died at once, he was afraid that he would not be able to resurrect them with his current strength. No matter what, Yi Xian must die. The Shrine of Ice immediately attacked. However, his realm was only 3 levels higher than Yi Xian's. So what? Deal with the others first. The sword god's doppelganger immediately released Old Tree, Black Horn, Black Gold Swordsman, and Deathless Swordsman. Mount of the War God. The sword god's doppelganger once again summoned a powerful assistant. As he had completed a random mission previously, the system rewarded him with a gold mount of the war god. However, this time, it was not a gold mount, but a platinum mount. At this moment, what appeared in front of Yi Xian was a fiery red phoenix. This phoenix was called Evil Phoenix. Ice and fire were incompatible. As soon as this evil phoenix appeared, it fought to a draw with the Shrine of Ice's Hall Master. Originally, Yi Xian wanted to block the Shrine of Ice's Hall Master. But now, it seemed that there was no need for that. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yi Xian immediately cooperated with the others to deal with the elders of the rank 5 Eternal Emperors and the steward of the rank 4 Eternal Emperor. The entire process took no more than 3 seconds. After that, the Shrine of Ice became a commander without an army. Who exactly are you? The Shrine of Ice Master could not help but ask. It was impossible for someone with such strength to work under him for so many years. This Yang Shua was definitely not the real Yang Shua. Since you've asked so sincerely, I'll be merciful and tell you the answer. The sword god's doppelganger's lips slightly curled as he revealed his true form. Sure enough, it was not Yang Shua. However, by the time the Shrine of Ice Master reacted, it was already too late. At this moment, Yi Xian had dealt with everyone. Next, it was time to deal with the Shrine of Ice Master. Eye of Assassination. In an instant, Yi Xian once again flashed behind the Shrine of Ice Master and fiercely slashed with his sword. Clang! This attack was blocked by an Eternal Emperor weapon. It seemed to be no ordinary weapon. Humph! This Eternal Emperor weapon was bestowed to me by my master. How can it be broken so easily? The Shrine of Ice Master coldly snorted. However, this was nothing to Yi Xian. Anything that could be done with time was not a problem at all. No matter how hard a tortoise's shell was, there would come a day when it would be broken. Even water droplets could penetrate stone, so Yi Xian was not afraid that he could not break it. Moreover, they had the advantage in numbers. Rumble! The sound of battle was deafening. The sword god's doppelganger, the black gold swordsman, the deathless swordsman, the old tree, the black horn, and the evil phoenix besieged the Shrine of Ice Master. Not long after, the Shrine of Ice Master could not hold on any longer. His face gradually turned gloomy. You want the divine ice stone? Fine, I'll give it to you. The Shrine of Ice master suddenly bellowed and took out a blue stone. This blue stone was the treasure of the Shrine of Ice, the Divine Ice Stone. Chapter 2065. This snowstorm was 100 times more violent than the one at Ice Edge Villa. In an instant, everything in the surroundings was frozen. The black gold swordsman, deathless swordsman, old tree, black horn, and even the platinum-ranked evil phoenix were all frozen. Only the sword god's doppelganger was spared. What? You? The hall master of the Shrine of Ice panicked. Once the divine ice stone appeared, even he would be frozen. At this moment, the lower half of his body could no longer move. He looked at Yi Xian in astonishment. Why was Yi Xian immune to the effects of the divine ice stone? TSK. Yi Xian grinned as he watched the hall master of the Shrine of Ice turn into an ice sculpture. The hall master of the Shrine of Ice courted his own death. This was exactly what he wanted. Because of this, the hall master of the Shrine of Ice could no longer move and was at his mercy. Although the hall master of the Shrine of Ice had a pretty good Eternal Emperor weapon on him, in addition to the layer of ice formed by the divine ice stone, even a 7th-rank Eternal Emperor might not be able to break through. However, one should not forget that Yi Xian possessed an unstoppable divine skill. The reason why Yi Xian dealt with the others first was because he had anticipated that this would be the outcome. At present, apart from the sword god's doppelganger, everyone was frozen. This was the perfect opportunity to replay the scene. Like before, he placed the ice sculptures together and slashed horizontally. Divine sword technique. Swish. Previously, the Villa Master of Ice Edge Villa had used the sacred ice stone condensed from the divine ice stone. This time, however, the hall master of the Shrine of Ice had used the divine ice stone, which was more than 100 times more powerful than the sacred ice stone. But even so, it was useless. In an instant, all the ice sculptures, including the hall master of the Shrine of Ice, were cut in half by the divine sword technique. They died on the spot. Yi Xian had directly obtained the mandate of a 6th-rank Eternal Emperor. However, as he had just made a breakthrough, this mandate only increased his mandate level. He could not make another breakthrough. With the death of the Shrine of Ice, there was no longer a need for the Shrine of Ice to exist. At once, Yi Xian had the resurrected old tree and black horn absorb the entire Shrine of Ice into his devouring space. Ding! The divine ice stone has been successfully devoured. The activation of the 5-element sword servants is now at 20%. The system prompted. The 5-element sword servants required 5 specific materials to activate. Their combat strength was ranked 5th among all sword servants, and they were extremely powerful. One had to know that the undying swordsman had barely squeezed into the top 10. After that, Yi Xian conducted a soul search on the Shrine of Ice's chief. The closest one is the Withered Wood Divine Palace? Yi Xian raised an eyebrow. There was a piece of Withered Wood Divine Stone in the Withered Wood Divine Hall, which was exactly what was needed to activate the 5-element sword attendants. Yi Xian immediately headed for the Withered Wood Shrine. Although Yi Xian was doing shady business now, he had no choice but to do so in order to find Luo in the 9th heaven as soon as possible. Moreover, as long as he was strong enough in the future, he could resurrect these people and even give them 100 times more cultivation resources as compensation. To put it simply, Yi Xian was just forcibly borrowing the other party's belongings. A few days later, he arrived at the Withered Wood Shrine. Compared to the Shrine of Ice, the Withered Wood Shrine was much easier to deal with. With his own strength, Yi Xian easily dealt with the people of the Withered Wood Shrine and then absorbed them into his devouring space. At this moment, he was on the verge of a breakthrough. With a little more destiny, he would be able to break through to become a 4th-grade Eternal Emperor. However, the news of the Shrine of Ice and the Withered Wood Shrine being destroyed one after another had spread to the other 3 shrines. The experts of the 3 shrines had gathered to guard against any unforeseen circumstances. If one were to rank the 5 shrines, the Shrine of Ice and the Withered Wood Shrine were at the bottom of the 5 shrines. This was because the shrine masters of the other 3 shrines were all 7th-grade Eternal Emperors with extraordinary strength. But so what? After annihilating the Withered Wood Shrine, Yi Xian headed for the Violent Earth Shrine. However, this time around, he was intercepted by a group of people while he was on his way. Yi Xian, who was on his way, sensed that a group of several dozen people was approaching him. The combined aura of these people was very terrifying. There were at least 9 6th-grade Eternal Emperors. He immediately squinted his eyes and saw that these people were wearing 3 kinds of clothes. With just a glance, he understood the origin of these people. It turned out that this group was formed by the experts of the 3 shrines. Their purpose was to capture Yi Xian and bring him back. Yi Xian had first destroyed the Shrine of Ice and then the Withered Wood Shrine. Therefore, the 3 shrines sent their experts to the Violent Earth Shrine, which was the closest to the Withered Wood Shrine. They were heading for the Withered Wood Shrine and coincidentally bumped into Yi Xian. Yes, that's him. At this time, a person at the front of the group took out a floating image crystal and compared it. Inside the floating image crystal was the scene of Yi Xian killing the experts of the Withered Wood Divine Hall. Although the person who recorded the floating image crystal had already been absorbed by Yi Xian into the devouring space, the floating image crystal he recorded was transmitted to the other 3 great shrines. As a result, Yi Xian was recognized at a glance. Bastard! How dare you do such a thing? Tell us your name. The leader shouted angrily. Anyway, I'm going to die anyway. It's useless to know my name. Yi Xian muttered, shaking his head. As soon as these words came out, it immediately aroused the disgust of the crowd. Wasn't this a little too much? Although Yi Xian had annihilated the Shrine of Ice and the Withered Wood Shrine, these 2 shrines only had 1 6th-grade Eternal Emperor each. Now, they had organized 10 Eternal Emperors to capture Yi Xian. They were confident that they could even fight a 7th-grade Eternal Emperor. Not to mention that Yi Xian was only a 3rd-grade Eternal Emperor. Go, capture him first. At that moment, the leader shouted angrily. Immediately after, everyone surrounded Yi Xian. But in the next moment, Yi Xian's figure disappeared from their sight. No, he didn't disappear. Some people caught sight of Yi Xian, but he was behind the leader. Be careful. A person beside him shouted. Unfortunately, it was too late. Kacha! A crisp sound was heard. The leader's Eternal Emperor weapon was directly shattered. Even his head was sent flying. There was a saying that went, "Times have changed." Although Yi Xian was still a 3rd-grade Eternal Emperor like he was when he annihilated the Shrine of Ice. But during this period of time, his heavenly fate level had increased. Back then, he couldn't break the Eternal Emperor weapon of the Shrine of Ice. But today, it was enough. The leader's death shocked everyone. Before they could react, the leader's heavenly fate was taken by Yi Xian. Chapter 2066. Ding! Host has made a breakthrough. Host is now a 4th-grade Eternal Emperor. A system notification rang in Yi Xian's mind. If he had not made a breakthrough, he would have been surrounded and beaten like a sandbag. Now that he had made a breakthrough, he did not have to fear anyone. Sure enough, after he made a breakthrough, the experts of the 3 sacred halls were like a bunch of chickens and dogs. They were all beaten to a pulp. In the end, they were all killed by Yi Xian. Yi Xian obtained the interspatial ring. Yi Xian devoured the heaven's will. This group of people was Yi Xian's second parents. They knew that Yi Xian was in trouble and came to give him benefits. Now that he had broken through to the 4th-grade Eternal Emperor realm, there was no one in the vicinity who could stop him. The other 3 sacred halls only had 1 7th-grade Eternal Emperor each. There was nothing to be afraid of. Yi Xian continued his journey. As long as he destroyed the 3 sacred halls, the 5-element sword attendants could be activated. Next, Yi Xian used his superior strength to destroy the Violent Earth Sacred Hall and then the Origin Gold Sacred Hall. In this way, only the Scarlet Flame Sacred Hall was left. At this time, Yi Xian was already on his way to the Scarlet Flame Sacred Hall. Previously, he had destroyed 2 sacred halls, which had increased his heaven's will by a lot. He estimated that if he destroyed the most powerful sacred hall, the Scarlet Flame Sacred Hall, he might be able to break through to 5th-grade Eternal Emperor. However, things were not as simple as he thought. The Scarlet Flame Sacred Hall had notified an expert after learning about the destruction of the other 4 sacred halls. A few days later, Yi Xian arrived at the Scarlet Flame Sacred Hall. However, the Sacred Hall was surrounded. All the experts were lined up neatly, waiting for Yi Xian's arrival. Scarlet Flame Sacred Hall Master, come out and meet me. Yi Xian shouted as soon as he arrived. Who's there? The experts of the Scarlet Flame Sacred Hall looked around one after another, but they did not see anyone. At this time, the Sword God's doppelganger suddenly removed the Void Spirit Divine armor and revealed his true body. Only then did they notice Yi Xian. He's here. After seeing Yi Xian, someone from the Divine Hall of Scarlet Flames immediately reported this matter to their superiors. Of course, even if they didn't report it, the Scarlet Flame Temple Master would have already known. After all, Yi Xian's words had made his intentions clear. However, due to Yi Xian's ferocious reputation, these Scarlet Flame Divine Temple's experts did not dare to act rashly. Soon, the Scarlet Flame Divine Hall's Temple Master came out. This was a red-haired old man who possessed the strength of a rank 7 Eternal Emperor. He was the strongest expert in the 5 sacred halls. Are you the one who destroyed the other 4 divine halls? The Scarlet Flame Divine Hall Master narrowed his eyes and asked. Yi Xian did not try to hide it. He nodded and said, "That's right. I did it." "How dare you kill a few of my brothers?" said the Scarlet Flame Divine Hall's Palace Master. From the memories of those people, it could be seen that the 5 sacred halls' palace masters used to be disciples of certain forces. Yi Xian naturally did not forget. He smiled and said, "Only those who are capable will know of the treasure. If you hand over the Scarlet Flame Divine Stone obediently, I can spare your life." Although he said so, he did not think that the Scarlet Flame Divine Hall Master would compromise so easily. After all, the Scarlet Flame Divine Stone was the most precious treasure of the Scarlet Flame Divine Hall. How could he give it away so easily? You're really asking for too much. The Scarlet Flame Divine Hall Master snorted coldly. Now, you have the 4 Attribute Divine Stones. If you add my Scarlet Flame Divine Stone, you have 5. I'm curious, why do you want to collect the 5 Attribute Divine Stones? You don't need to worry about what I want to do. You just need to hand it over to me. Of course, you can choose not to hand it over. If you do, the consequences will be the same as your other 4 brothers, said Yi Xian. You think you can do that? The Scarlet Flame Divine Hall Master was furious. The saint power in his body surged as he raised his hand to attack Yi Xian. You're courting death. Yi Xian's eyes shone brightly. In an instant, he disappeared and reappeared behind the Scarlet Flame Divine Hall Master. Crack! With just one blow, the Scarlet Flame Divine Hall Master's Eternal Emperor weapon was shattered by Yi Xian. The Scarlet Flame Divine Hall Master turned pale with fright. He was much stronger than the other 4, but Yi Xian, a 4th-grade Eternal Emperor, was actually able to break through his defense in an instant. Wasn't this strength too monstrous? Before he could react, Yi Xian attacked again and sent him flying. If he was an ordinary 7th-grade Eternal Emperor, he would have been killed by Yi Xian. However, the Scarlet Flame Divine Hall Master was quite capable and survived. However, he would not live for long. Yi Xian was determined to kill him. However, at this moment, stop! Suddenly, an explosive shout entered Yi Xian's ears. He turned his head to look and saw a figure in the air that just happened to attack him. Whoosh! This person's attack was very fast and landed on the Sword God Doppelganger in an instant. The Sword God Doppelganger was hit and sent flying. Fortunately, the Sword God Doppelganger had an invincible body. Otherwise, even a 7th-grade Eternal Emperor would have died. So strong! Yi Xian shuddered. He sensed that this person's aura was several times stronger than the Scarlet Flame Divine Hall Master's. A 8th-grade Eternal Emperor. Where did this expert come from? Yi Xian could not figure it out. However, when he saw the newcomer's face, a memory immediately came to him. This person had appeared in the memories of the 4 palace masters before. Furthermore, he had an extraordinary relationship with the 4 of them. This person was the master of the 5 temple masters of the 5 Elements Temple, Ko Wenhua. This Ko Wenhua is a guardian of the 5 Elements Temple of a large force. He is an 8th-grade Eternal Emperor. The 5 Elements Temple is an expert who is a half-step sovereign. Yi Xian thought to himself. Before he could react, Ko Wenhua attacked again. He was determined to kill Yi Xian. In this battle, if it were a normal fight, Yi Xian would not be able to kill his opponent no matter what. Even if he had the divine sword technique, he would have to hit his opponent. However, given Yi Xian's temperament, he would not fight one-on-one with his opponent. I'm not fighting alone. Yi Xian's eyes lit up and immediately released Old Tree and the others. However, Old Tree and the others' opponent was not Ko Wenhua, but the Scarlet Flame Divine Hall Master. His ability to summon out of thin air surprised Ko Wenhua. Immediately, the latter attacked and killed Old Shu and the others. However, the moment he made a move, he gave Yi Xian a chance. At this time, Yi Xian had used the Eye of Assassination and flashed behind the Scarlet Flame Divine Hall Master. Crack! Another crisp sound was heard. This time, the Scarlet Flame Divine Hallmaster's defenses were all broken. Oh no! Ko Wenhua and the Scarlet Flame Divine Hallmaster's expressions changed drastically. However, even if Ko Wenhua was an 8th-grade Eternal Emperor, he could not prevent the next scene from happening. Old Tree and the others who had been killed by Ko Wenhua appeared again. Chapter 2067. Boom! Amidst a rumbling sound, the Scarlet Flame Divine Hall's Hallmaster was killed. When his corpse fell from the sky, it was absorbed by Yi Xian into the devouring space. At the same time, the Scarlet Blaze Divine Stone in the Scarlet Blaze Shrine Master's hand fell into Yi Xian's hand. Now he had all the 5 elements Divine Stones. Ding! The host can activate the 5-element swordsmen. Do you want to activate them? Yes. Yi Xian immediately responded. Ding! The activation of the 5-element swordsman is successful. The host's affinity with the 5 elements has reached the upper limit. The system notification sounded. The upper limit of the affinity with the 5 elements was the maximum value. This meant that Yi Xian's attacks with the 5 elements would be significantly more powerful in the future. In addition, he had a damage reduction effect on such attacks. Previously, Yi Xian had increased his fire attack power by using the Immortal Phoenix bloodline and the Immortal Eye Unicorn bloodline. Now, he had increased his affinity by 4 more elements. This was very good. Yi Xian immediately released the 5-element swordsmen. The 5-element swordsmen were dressed quite handsomely. Beside them floated 5 elemental spheres of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Although they did not attack, Yi Xian could feel their aura. They were more powerful than the immortal swordsman. Your opponent is him. Go! Yi Xian immediately ordered the 5-element swordsman. In an instant, the 5-element swordsman charged toward Ko Wenhua. Ko Wenhua was the guardian of the 5 elements path. He cultivated the 5 elements cultivation method. Together with the mandate of heaven, he was very powerful. However, this was child's play for the 5-element swordsman. Whoosh! A slash broke through the air and attacked the 5-element swordsman. At the same time, the 5-element swordsmen fiercely slashed with their sword. A sword chi containing the 5 elements broke through the air. Bang! In the air, a shockwave swept out. The 2 sword chis collided and dissipated together. The 5-element swordsman was the same level as Yi Xian. They were both 4th-grade Eternal Emperors. However, their attack was on par with Ko Wenhua's, who was an 8th-grade Eternal Emperor. How was this possible? Ko Wenhua was shocked, and so was Yi Xian. However, Yi Xian knew that the 5-element sword attendants were completely immune to 5 elements attacks, and so were his attacks. That was why the sword attendants of the 5 elements had been able to disperse the sword chi of the 5 elements, and then their attacks were on par with the heaven's will. In short, Ko Wenhua's attack was a heavenly fate attack to the 5-element sword attendants. If it was another person, the 5-element sword attendants would be at a disadvantage. This time it was just right. In an instant, the 5-element sword attendants and Ko Wenhua exchanged blows. Although there was a huge gap between the two of them, their strength was evenly matched. The 5-element sword servants are indeed powerful. They are much stronger than the undying sword servants. Yi Xian nodded in satisfaction. However, he couldn't just watch the 5-element sword attendants and Ko Wenhua fight one-on-one. Ares' domain. At this moment, he activated another trump card. In the next moment, the entire world seemed to have frozen. Apart from him, there was only one other expert from the Scarlet Flame Temple who could move. Eye of Assassination. Before the expert from the Scarlet Flame Temple could react, Yi Xian had already appeared behind him and slashed with his sword. Rip! In an instant, the sword god's doppelganger killed the expert and received the buff effect of the invincible god of war. Go! As the world returned to normal, Yi Xian led the old tree and the others to attack Ko Wenhua. Even Ko Wenhua had to pay attention to such a situation. Kid, where did you come from? Ko Wenhua finally couldn't help but ask. I'll tell you when you're dead. Yi Xian didn't answer this question because there was no need to. What a big mouth. Ko Wenhua snorted and decided to go all out. However, in the face of all kinds of attacks, he, an 8th-grade Eternal Emperor, seemed to be a little weak. This battle lasted for a full minute. One should know that an expert of this level could do a lot of things in 1 second. For example, He could easily cross 10 billion kilometers of land. Not to mention an eternal emperor. Even an immortal could easily cross 1,000,000 kilometers of land using the immortal jump. 1 minute was enough for them to exchange blows countless times. However, in this 1 minute, the one who was suppressed was not Yi Xian, but Ko Wenhua. It was really funny. A dignified 8th-grade Eternal Emperor was actually defeated by a group of 4th-grade Eternal Emperors. If news of this spread, Ko Wenhua would lose face. However, what Ko Wenhua didn't know was that Yi Xian hadn't used his full strength yet. Alright, enough fun. It's time for you to accompany your 5 disciples. At this time, Yi Xian's lips suddenly curled up. Just now, he had killed the Scarlet Flame Temple Master and killed the rest of the people. In other words, he had a huge amount of cultivation resources in his hands. After activating the 5-element sword servants, Yi Xian wanted to test the combat power of the 5-element sword servants. Therefore, he had only been playing around. Now he was done playing. Ding! The host has broken through. The host is now a 5th-grade Eternal Emperor. In an instant, the aura of Yi Xian's group skyrocketed. The Sword God's Doppelganger, Old Tree, Black Horn, Black Gold Sword Servant, Undying Sword Servant, 5-element Sword Servant, and Yi Xian's War God Mount all rose from 4th-grade Eternal Emperors to 5th-grade Eternal Emperors without exception. Their overall strength had increased by more than 10 times. What? Ko Wenhua was shocked. Before the breakthrough, these people had been able to put him under pressure. Now that they had both broken through, how could he fight? Let's go. Ko Wenhua made a prompt decision and immediately turned around to leave. It's too late to leave now. Yi Xian's eyes widened. In the next moment, everyone used their trump cards. A series of attacks pierced through the air. Ko Wenhua shivered and dodged the attacks of Old Shoe and Black Horn, but was hit by the 2 sword chis of the 5-element sword servants and the undead sword servants. Ko Wenhua could still block the sword chi of the undying sword servant. At that time, he could not block the attack of the 5-element sword servant at all. After the breakthrough, the invisible sword servant could easily destroy his destiny protection. When the 5-colored sword light entered his body, Ko Wenhua felt the blood in his body surge. In the next moment, Ko Wenhua's body exploded and he died. At that moment, Yi Xian rushed over and collected Ko Wenhua's interspatial ring and destiny. Then, he unceremoniously devoured them. His strength had increased by another step. The disciples of Crimson Flame Divine Hall were dumbfounded. Not only did the Hall Master die, but even the Hall Master's master also died? This was too unreal. Before they could react, the group of low-level Eternal Emperors were all sucked into the devouring space by Old Tree and Black Horn. Since obtaining the Beast God Clock, Yi Xian had a habit of letting Wei Zhentian search his soul. Chapter 2068. Yi Xian found quite a few 5-element stones in Ko Wenhua's interspatial ring. He immediately gave them to the 5-element swordsman to strengthen. Ko Wenhua was a guardian of the 5 elements, and the 5 elements were half-step sovereigns. The members of the 5-element sect all cultivated with the help of 5-element stones. They usually formed groups of 5, and they would complement each other and cultivate together. This way, their cultivation speed would be much faster than the average person's. The 5-element sect actually has a 5-element stone mine? Yi Xian's lips curled up slightly. The 5-element swordsmen were currently his strongest subordinates. If he could continue to strengthen them, it would be excellent. However, the half-step sovereigns of the 5-element sect had to be careful. Ko Wenhua's body exploded and died. Although I collected his body parts, I'm only 80% sure. I wonder if anyone would be able to see through my disguise if I use the true mask. Yi Xian raised an eyebrow and decided to give it a try. Previously, he had almost always used a 100% disguise. Now that he was going to use an 80% disguise, he didn't know if he would be discovered. An 80% disguise meant that he could only disguise himself as 80% of Ko Wenhua's face, voice, and aura. It would be easy to recognize him. Forget it. It's already good enough that I'm 80% sure. When the time comes, I'll just say that it was caused by cultivation. Yi Xian didn't think too much and prepared to head to the 5-element sect. Coincidentally, Ko Wenhua had built a teleportation formation near the Crimson Flame Shrine, so Yi Xian took advantage of it. Yi Xian used the formation to cross a large distance and arrived near the 5-element sect. It's said that the Five Elements sect's patriarch has a five-element spirit root and has an extremely high affinity for the five elements. That's why he was able to form 5 Dao seeds when he was just a half-step Dao lord. He's very powerful. Yi Xian thought to himself as he approached the Five Elements sect's mountain gate. Guardian Ko, you've returned. When he arrived at the Five Elements mountain gate, the disciples at the gate greeted him respectfully. Yi Xian pretended to be thoughtful. After nodding slightly, he walked in. He searched through Ko Wenhua's memories. Although his memories were incomplete due to the incomplete corpse, it should not be difficult for him to deal with ordinary matters. The 5 elements, as expected of the 5 elements. After entering, Yi Xian couldn't help but click his tongue, because he felt many auras that were not weaker than Ko Wenhua's. This meant that they were at least rank 8 Eternal Emperors. Apart from that, there were also several elders who were 9th grade Eternal Emperors. With Yi Xian's current strength, if they were to fight here, it would definitely be a strenuous and unrewarding task. Let's take a look at the 5 elements vein first. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes slightly. He was now disguised as the guardian of the 5 elements sect, Ko Wenhua. He was qualified to enter the 5 elements mine. The 5 elements veins in the 5 elements sect could produce 5 elements divine stones, but the 5 elements sect patriarch did not allow them to wantonly mine because their cultivation methods could be improved faster if they cultivated in the 5 elements veins. 5 element or veins were extremely rare. If they were to collapse, it would be a huge loss. Once the 5 elements or vein collapsed, the 5 element sect would most likely come to an end. Then it would most likely go downhill. Yi Xian entered the 5 elements or vein under the guise of Ko Wenhua's guardian. This time, he did not dare to casually mine the 5 elements divine stones because there were formations set up on them. Once someone touched them, an elder would appear. However, Yi Xian's attention was not on the 5 elements divine stones this time. His target was the 5 elements sect disciples who had entered the 5 elements or vein to cultivate. The most outstanding 5 elements sect disciples is only a rank 7 Eternal Emperor. There is nothing to be afraid of. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. He looked at the 5 forks in front of him and randomly chose one to enter. The 5 elements or vein had 5 subveins of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Each subvein had countless mines. Every disciple who entered would choose a mine to cultivate in. Yi Xian entered the metal mine and sensed it. He found that there was also a small protective formation inside. If he did not enter personally, he would not know who was inside. Yi Xian randomly chose a mine and entered it. He found a disciple cultivating inside. The 5 elements sect disciple sensed Yi Xian's arrival. He did not open his eyes, but he was slightly angry. One had to know that the rules of the 5 elements or vein were clearly written on the entrance. As long as there was someone inside, the protective formation would light up and no one else was allowed to enter. However, when the 5 elements sect disciples saw Yi Xian's face, he swallowed the words that had risen to his throat. Guardian Ko. The 5 elements sect disciple hurriedly greeted him. However, as soon as he finished speaking, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared and reappeared behind him. Rip! With a crisp sound, the disciple's head was directly cut off by Yi Xian's sword. In an instant, the destiny stone in the disciple's body condensed into an eternal destiny stone. Collect! Without saying a word, Yi Xian put away the corpse and the remains of the disciple. This scene happened so quickly that the disciple, a 5th grade Eternal Emperor, was killed before he could react. In this way, no one would notice. After that, Yi Xian left the first mine and entered the second. He used the same method to kill all the people in the second mine to reap the benefits. In this metal-type mine alone, there were thousands of people cultivating. Moreover, they were all at least 3rd grade Eternal Emperors. This was the standard for entering the 5 elements or vein to cultivate. In order to increase efficiency, Yi Xian decided to release the Old Tree, Black Horn, and the others to assist him. However, Black Horn, Old Tree, and the others were too obvious. They would be easily discovered. Once they were discovered, it would cause a lot of unnecessary trouble. For example, they would attract the attention of the Guardian Elder. The Guardian Elder was a 9th grade Eternal Emperor expert. He was only one step away from becoming a half-step sovereign. Yi Xian could fight such an expert. However, he should not forget whose territory he was in. The 5 Elements Sect. A battle in the most important place of the Five Elements sect would naturally attract the attention of the Five Elements sect's patriarch. When the time came, the half-step sovereign patriarch might personally take action. Therefore it was better to be careful. Although Yi Xian's efficiency was low when he acted alone, it was very safe. With the mask of authenticity, even the Five Elements sect's patriarch would not be able to recognize him if he stood in front of him. In the following time, Yi Xian hunted the disciples of the Five Elements sect in the metal-type mine. Chapter 2069. Then, Yi Xian left the metal-type mine and entered the wood-type mine. Using the same method, he killed many disciples. These disciples were very unlucky. They were cultivating well when they were killed. They died with grievances. However, Yi Xian promised in his heart that he would resurrect them one day and give them heavenly treasures. This kind of thing was child's play for Yi Xian. Not to mention breaking through to a higher realm. Just his current strength of a 5th-grade Eternal Emperor was enough to resurrect a 3rd-grade Eternal Emperor. However, this would damage his destiny. If he became a 6th-grade Eternal Emperor, it would not be much of a problem. At this time, Yi Xian had already wandered into the 4th Fire-type mine. He sensed that his destiny had reached a bottleneck. As long as he killed the people in the Fire-type mine, he could break through to become a 6th-grade Eternal Emperor. At that time, no one in the Tao of Five Elements would be a match for him except for the half-step sovereign old ancestor. His current strength had at least doubled compared to when he first entered the Tao of Five Elements mine. After all, these disciples had some 5 Elements sacred stones. Although they were inferior to the 5 Elements sacred stones, they were superior in quantity. Therefore, the 5 Elements sword attendants had also improved a lot. Soon, Yi Xian had almost finished off the people in the Fire-type mine. Yes, this time he did not have any scruples. After all, he was about to break through and could not hold back. After he killed an elite disciple of the 7th-grade Eternal Emperor level, he heard a system notification sound. Ding! The host has broken through and is now a 6th-grade Eternal Emperor. Hearing this, Yi Xian's eyes flashed and the corners of his mouth could not help but curl up slightly. Finally he had broken through. Now, which Eternal Emperor in the Tao of Five Elements could stop him? Since this was the case, he did not need to keep a low profile anymore. He directly released Old Tree and the others. In fact, there was a heavily guarded passageway in each of the 5 elemental mines in the Tao of Five Elements mine. There was a protector overseeing each passageway. Yi Xian knew that these 5 passageways led to the depths of the Tao of Five Elements mine. That was the forbidden area of the Tao of Five Elements. Even the protectors could not enter. At the same time, it was also the destination of Yi Xian. Immediately, he walked towards the entrance. Protector Ko? One of the guardians at the entrance recognized Yi Xian. However, Yi Xian did not waste any time. He immediately used Death Hunt Command and Assassin's Eye to attack the enemy from behind. Hiss! A crisp sound rang out, and the protector died instantly. What a joke! Even a 9th-grade Eternal Emperor Elder was not worth mentioning in front of Yi Xian, let alone a mere 8th-grade Eternal Emperor Protector. Each of these 5 paths is guarded by a protector, and it is said that there are 2 elders in the depths. Yi Xian thought to himself. He had learned this from Ko Wenhua's memories. 2 elders were equivalent to 2 9th-grade Eternal Emperors. This was not a small number. But in front of Yi Xian, it was nothing. Without another word, Yi Xian walked into the passageway. Not long after, he sensed 2 powerful auras. Who is it? Before Yi Xian could walk out of the passageway, an old voice sounded from inside. Elder, I have something to report. Yi Xian said immediately. Come in. The people inside recognized Ko Wenhua's voice. Yi Xian continued to walk. When he walked out of the passageway, he saw 2 old men in the 5 Elements sect elder robes sitting cross-legged in the middle. Behind them was a simple and unadorned door. That door should be the secret of the formation of the 5 Elements vein. Protector Ko, I remember that you are not the one guarding the passageway today. Why are you here? A black-robed elder asked. Because I am here to kill you. Yi Xian was impatient. Before he finished speaking, he had already flashed behind the other party. Crack! The Eternal Emperor weapon on the black-robed elder shattered into pieces. Yi Xian's attack had broken through his defense. The next attack would be enough to take his life. What? the black-robed elder and the other white-robed elder were shocked. Ko Wenhua was only an 8th-grade Eternal Emperor. Although the black-robed elder was not the strongest among the Eternal Emperors, he was still a mid-grade 9th-grade Eternal Emperor. How did he do it? You disgraceful bastard! Seeing this, the white-robed elder immediately tried to capture Ko Wenhua. But in the next moment, several figures appeared in front of Yi Xian and covered his body. The white-robed elder's attack was blocked by the invisible swordsman after killing the old tree and black horn. At the same time, Yi Xian took advantage of this gap and flashed behind the other party. Crack! The white-robed elder was once again caught off guard and was sent flying. Quick, inform the ancestor. The white-robed elder spat out a mouthful of blood and shouted angrily. Unfortunately, the black-robed elder did not reply. The white-robed elder's face was gloomy. He squinted and found that the black-robed elder, whose defense had been broken by Yi Xian, had his heart pierced by a golden saber-toothed tiger and died. One of the 2 9th-grade Eternal Emperors died in an instant and the other was seriously injured. It's over. The white-robed elder seemed to have seen the end of the world. Yi Xian had the strength to kill the black-robed elder. Naturally, he also had the ability to kill him. He was afraid that he would not survive the next moment. Sure enough, without waiting for him to stop, Yi Xian and the others launched a fierce attack on him. Boom! The group of people attacked together and killed the 9th-grade Eternal Emperor white-robed elder. Then, Yi Xian quickly put away the 2 corpses and moved quickly to the quaint door. Although the battle just now did not last long, the 2 elders might have already sent a voice transmission to the 5 Elements sect ancestor. Therefore, Yi Xian had to get the treasure as soon as possible. After Yi Xian observed for a while, he found that this formation was not ordinary. It should have been set up by the 5 Elements sect ancestor himself. This can't stop me. Yi Xian smiled confidently and joined forces with the others to attack. However, these attacks dissipated as soon as they landed on the defensive formation. Moreover, there was not even a sound. This made Yi Xian feel a little strange. What's going on? Why is there a soundproof formation? Yi Xian was puzzled. Instead of setting up a soundproof formation, it would have been better to set up a defensive formation. However, he did not care so much and continued to attack. However, this defensive formation was very powerful. With his current strength, he could not break it. Damn, a half-step ruler is so powerful. Yi Xian could not help but sigh. Half-step sovereign realm was a whole new realm. There was a huge gap between an Eternal Emperor and a half-step ruler. The former would not be able to withstand a single blow from the latter. A formation set up by such an expert was not something that an Eternal Emperor could break. Chapter 2070. Since that's the case, I have no choice but to use my trump card. Let's take the things and leave. Yi Xian's eyes flickered. He had already decided to use his trump card. If he could obtain the treasure that formed the 5 Elements vein, he could plant it in the devouring space. This way, the 5 Elements sword attendants could be continuously strengthened. Divine sword technique. Without hesitation, Yi Xian slashed at the quaint door. With this move, the entire 5 Elements mineral vein was split open. The quaint door and the defensive formation were broken together. Boom! The stone at the door shattered and fell heavily to the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. As the formation was broken, Yi Xian's perception could penetrate it. However, when he sensed it, he was frightened. There was an extremely powerful aura inside. A 9th-grade Eternal Emperor? No. This aura was dozens of times stronger than a 9th-grade Eternal Emperor. The 5 Elements sect's great ancestor? Yi Xian almost fainted. He did not expect that the 5 Elements sect's great ancestor, whom he feared, was actually in seclusion inside. Although the smoke and dust filled the air, Yi Xian had the eye of things. He saw a figure sitting cross-legged inside. It must be the 5 Elements sect's great ancestor. The most ridiculous thing was that Yi Xian's attack just now had landed only half a meter away from the 5 Elements sect's great ancestor. If the distance had been slightly off, perhaps the divine sword art just now would have been enough to kill this half-step sovereign expert. What the F***ck? Yi Xian cursed in his heart. At this time, the 5 Elements sect's great ancestor reacted. He waved his right hand and quickly put away the 2 things beside him. These 2 things were his secrets. Who is it? An old voice fell into Yi Xian's ears. His expression was very interesting at this time.
It was as if he was in the middle of carrying on the ancestral line when Yi Xian barged in.
He was a little flustered. However, Yi Xian did not respond. He frowned and was thinking.
The two things that were put away by the Five Elements sect's great ancestor must be the secret of the Five Elements vein. If he had known, he would have flashed over and put away the things.
What a loss, what a loss. Who are you? How did you break in? The Five Elements sect's great ancestor asked again. How strange. There should be two elders guarding the door. Why aren't they here?
However, after he thought about it carefully, he discovered that he had some impression of the person before him.
He was actually a protector of his Five Elements path. Because Yi Xian's disguise was only 80% effective and the Five Elements ancestor was extremely mysterious, even a protector might not be able to meet him. Therefore, the Five Elements ancestor didn't recognize Ko Wenhua's face in time. Ancestor, I've come this time to ask you for two things, Yi Xian said. The Five Elements patriarch subconsciously asked after hearing this. The Five Elements great ancestor was furious. Although he didn't know how Yi Xian came in, nor did he know where the two elders went, in short, this matter was a secret of the Five Elements Tao. Only elders would know about it. Now that Yi Xian knew, he could not let him live. The Five Elements great ancestor immediately charged out. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions rang out. Yi Xian's people were all killed in 1 second, except for the sword god's clone. So strong. As expected of a half-step sovereign expert. Yi Xian could not help but exclaim in his heart. A half-step sovereign expert had fused the Tao fruit and the 99 fate into their Tao heart. The Five Elements great ancestor already had a Tao heart, so his strength was extraordinary. Fortunately, the sword god's clone was invincible. Even if he was beaten for 10,000 years, he would not die. However, Yi Xian was a little hesitant.
With his current combat strength, he could not fight the Five Elements great ancestor, not even the Five Elements sword servants.
So should he leave or stay? I won't leave first. Let's destroy the Five Elements sect first. Yi Xian's eyes flashed. This time, he decided to use his true body. The sword god's clone delayed the Five Elements great ancestor, while his true body descended personally. With his strength, no one could stop him except the Five Elements great ancestor. As long as he killed the rest of the Five Elements sect, he might be able to break through to become a rank 7 eternal emperor. At this time, Yi Xian's face suddenly changed and returned to his original appearance. This was because he had already put away Wei Zhentian, who had turned into the mask of authenticity.
As for his true body, he had already descended to the Five Elements sect and put on the Void Spirit Divine Armor.
To be safe, he even summoned the Black Gold Divine Armor. The Five Elements great ancestor was a half-step sovereign. Even if he did not use energy attacks, he might be able to kill him with just his fists. Thus, it was better to be careful. Rumble! Deafening sounds kept coming from the Five Elements mine. However, at this time the Five Elements great ancestor, who was wondering why he could not kill Yi Xian, felt something. What did you do? The Five Elements great ancestor could not help but ask. Nothing. I'm just killing your elders. The sword god's clone grinned. The Five Elements great ancestor's expression changed, but he did not leave this place and continued to attack Yi Xian. His attacks were very sharp. If Yi Xian's true body was here, even with the Black Gold Divine Armor and the Void Spirit Divine Armor, he would be in danger of dying. However, when the Five Elements great ancestor attacked, Yi Xian's aura suddenly rose by a large margin. Although he did not break through, his heavenly fate level had indeed increased. This was because his true body had killed the other elders of the Five Elements sect and absorbed all their heavenly fates. In addition, there were the protectors and mid-level Eternal Emperor disciples. After dealing with them, Yi Xian's true body charged into the Five Elements mine and began to wantonly mine the Five Elements Divine Stone. The Five Elements Divine Stone could not only be used to strengthen the Five Elements sword servants, but it could also be used to forge weapons. As long as the Divine Sword Art's cooldown was restored, Yi Xian would be able to pose a threat to the Five Elements great ancestor. Bastard! How dare you destroy my Five Elements sect? The Five Elements great ancestor suddenly sensed something and could not help but roar. So what? You can resurrect them anyway. Isn't that right? Yi Xian said. You're courting death. The Five Elements' great ancestor was furious. He did not care about anything else and attacked Yi Xian with all his might. However, after attacking for a long time, Yi Xian was not injured at all. It was too strange. On the other side, Yi Xian's true body and the others had already begun to wantonly collect the Five Elements' divine stone. However, this was not a problem for the Five Elements' great ancestor because he had a Five Elements divine stone. As long as the Five Elements divine stone was still there, the Five Elements' great ancestor would not be considered destroyed. As for the others with his realm, he could easily resurrect even a seventh-grade eternal emperor.
Chapter 2071. Who exactly are you? How can a mere rank 6 eternal emperor withstand so many of my attacks without being injured?
The Five Elements sect's old ancestor couldn't help but ask. If you want to know, give me something in exchange? Yi Xian smirked. This answer infuriated the Five Elements sect's old ancestor, and he charged toward Yi Xian. After that, the sword god's avatar was in a passive state.
No, it should be said that from the beginning until now, he had been beaten up. However, his tough and indestructible body was capable of withstanding all of the Five Elements sect's old ancestors' attacks.
On the other side, his original body, the old tree, and the others had already emptied the Five Elements mineral vein, leaving nothing behind. The battle prowess of the Five Elements sword attendants soared. However, the Five Elements sword attendants had just been killed by the Five Elements sect's great ancestor, so there was a cooldown period. He could not summon them again today. Right now, I'm just a rank 6 eternal emperor. Apart from the divine sword technique, I don't pose a threat to this old man at all. I'd better level up first. Yi Xian thought to himself. Then, he left the 5 paths and headed for a nearby power. Nearby, there were several factions on the same level as the Five Elements ancestor. Their strongest experts were half-step sovereigns, but they were slightly weaker than the Five Elements ancestor. Yi Xian wanted to use them to increase his strength. Because Yi Xian had gone too far, the Five Elements Dao Patriarch beat Yi Xian for 3 days and 3 nights. In the past 3 days and 3 nights, the sword god's avatar had endured countless attacks. Even a rank 2 half-step dominator would most likely die under such attacks from the Five Elements Dao ancestor. From this, it could be seen how terrifying the strength of the Five Elements Dao ancestor was. Brat, what are you made of? You've taken so many of my attacks, yet you're completely unscathed? On the 4th day, the Five Elements grand ancestor asked once more. However, perhaps Yi Xian was numb from the beating, or perhaps he was too lazy to reply because his heart was still with the main body. However, at this moment, the Five Elements sect's great ancestor suddenly stopped, which surprised Yi Xian. What's wrong? Tired? The sword god's doppelganger smirked. You destroyed my 5 elements, but I can't kill you. What do you think I should do? The Five Elements' old ancestor asked helplessly. In this world, the cruelest thing was that you couldn't kill your enemy even though they were right in front of you. It was really too tragic. Don't worry. You'll know what to do in a moment. Yi Xian's lips curled up slightly. At this moment, his heaven's mandate had increased quite a bit compared to 3 days ago. In these 3 days, he visited 2 forces of the same level as the Five Elements and fiddled with them. At this moment, he was about to break through. Patriarch Five Elements was a little surprised, but not long after, he felt the change in Yi Xian's aura. Ding! Host has made a breakthrough.
Host is now a rank 7 eternal emperor.
A system notification sounded in Yi Xian's mind. He had finally broken through. Did that mean that Yi Xian now possessed the ability to fight the Tao of Five Elements Patriarch?
Old man, let's fight again.
At this moment, Yi Xian's eyes flickered and he suddenly summoned the old tree and the others. Of course, the old tree and the others were no threat to the Tao of Five Elements Patriarch. This time, Yi Xian's trump card was the Five Elements Swordsman. Humph! The Tao of Five Elements Patriarch snorted and instantly killed the old tree and the others. However, when his attack landed on the Five Elements sword attendants, it did not immediately kill them. Instead, it was blocked by them. What? The Tao of Five Elements Patriarch was shocked. Yi Xian was one thing, but now there was another freak? He felt it and found that the Five Elements swordsman had neutralized his Five Elements attack. Then, his Heaven's Mandate attack broke the Five Elements defense of the Five Elements swordsman. After it was weakened, it landed on the Five Elements swordsman. Good guy. The Tao of Five Elements patriarch could not help but sigh in his heart.
At this moment, the five elements swordsmen, who had been sent flying, suddenly slashed with their sword and charged at the Tao of Five Elements patriarch.
Child's play. The Tao of Five Elements patriarch snorted and raised his hand to block. However, to his surprise, the Five Elements swordsman's attack broke his Five Elements defense. What blocked the attack was the Heaven's Mandate defense. Fortunately, he was no longer an eternal emperor, but a half-step ruler. He immediately attacked with all his strength. Although Yi Xian had broken through to become a rank 7 eternal emperor, there was a huge gap between an eternal emperor and a half-step ruler. If Yi Xian was a rank 9 eternal emperor, he might be able to fight him. However, he was only a rank 7 eternal emperor. Sure enough, the Five Elements sword attendants suffered the same fate. Just like that day, they were killed by the Five Elements Tao ancestor. Kid, what other tricks do you have? The Tao of Five Elements patriarch looked at Yi Xian with his old eyes. I can't do anything to you for the time being, but I'm not worried. At most, I'll be able to deal with you in a month. Yi Xian said slowly.
A month.
The Tao of Five Elements patriarch almost laughed out loud.
He was a half-step ruler, and he had already forgotten how many years he had been cultivating since he was born.
Now, Yi Xian was saying that he would be able to deal with him in a month. How laughable. Kid, you're very strong. Why don't we make a deal? The Tao of Five Elements patriarch said. I wiped out your sect, and you still want to make a deal with me? Yi Xian was stunned. The Tao of Five Elements patriarch said, didn't you kill so many people to obtain natural treasures to cultivate? I know a place with good things. Why don't we work together and split the harvest equally? How about it? What good things? Yi Xian was attracted by the Tao of Five Elements patriarch. If a half-step ruler wanted something, it had to be something good. Just now you saw my secret, so I might as well tell you. I have a 5-colored divine stone in my hand. It's a treasure I obtained in my early years, but it can't continuously produce 5-colored divine stones. The 5-colored divine stone isn't the most important thing in my 5-colored divine stone, but something else, the Tao of Five Elements patriarch said. It's not? Yi Xian was stunned. If the 5-colored divine stone wasn't the most important thing in the 5-colored divine stone, then what was it? It's a drop of pseudo-divine blood. The Tao of Five Elements patriarch said, this pseudo-divine blood contains a huge amount of energy. It's what allows the 5-colored divine stone to continuously function. That's why my 5-colored divine stone isn't exhausted. Instead, it's growing. Pseudo-divine blood. After hearing this name, Yi Xian was a little surprised.
He had finally come into contact with his god, even if it was only a pseudo-god.
And then, Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. The Tao of Five Elements patriarch glanced at Yi Xian. He wanted to take out the 5-colored divine stone and the pseudo-divine blood, but he thought of Yi Xian's methods. If something went wrong, it would be troublesome. This pseudo-divine blood is the key to breaking through to half-step ruler realm. In my early years, I obtained a few drops of pseudo-divine blood in a dangerous place in the 7th layer heaven. However, after so many years, I've refined only this one drop, said the Tao of Five Elements patriarch. Hearing this, Yi Xian understood. Chapter 2072.
The cooperation you speak of is for me to enter that danger zone and obtain the pseudo-divine blood?
Yi Xian raised an eyebrow. That's right. The Five Elements ancestor nodded. Even I can't injure you. If we work together, we might be able to reap some benefits. That's not a bad idea, but I don't understand your realm at all, said Yi Xian. The Tao ancestor of the Five Elements Tao sect paused for a moment before he slowly said, a peak 9th grade eternal emperor already possesses a 99 fate. As long as you integrate this 99 fate into your Tao fruit, you can condense it into a Tao heart and become a half-step ruler. However, you're only a first-rank half-step sovereign. If you want to become a second-rank half-step sovereign, you need pseudo-divine blood. From first-rank half-step sovereign to second-rank half-step sovereign, you need to refine 11 drops of pseudo-divine blood. From second-rank half-step sovereign to third-rank half-step sovereign, you need to refine 11 more drops of pseudo-divine blood. So on and so forth, a peak 9th rank half-step sovereign needs to refine 99 drops of pseudo-divine blood. If you can refine the 100th drop of pseudo-divine blood, you'll reach the sovereign realm.
To reach the peak of the sovereign realm, you need to refine 999 drops of pseudo-divine blood. After refining the 1000th drop of pseudo-divine blood, you'll reach the undying sovereign realm. To reach the peak of the undying sovereign realm, you need to refine 9,999 drops of pseudo-divine blood. Refining pseudo-divine blood is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Even I have only refined 5 drops, so I'm only a mid-first rank half-step sovereign. Yi Xian nodded slightly after listening to the 5 elements ancestors' explanation. In the half-step sovereign realm, every level required 11 drops of pseudo-divine blood. In the sovereign realm, every level required 111 drops of pseudo-divine blood. Reaching the undying sovereign realm was even more terrifying. Every level required 1,111 drops of pseudo-divine blood. Refining the pseudo-divine blood would definitely become more and more difficult. Even the 5 elements' great ancestor had only refined the first 5 drops of pseudo-divine blood. Then what's after the undying sovereign realm? Asked Yi Xian. Only the undying sovereigns who have refined 9,999 drops of pseudo-divinity blood can fuse pseudo-divinity blood with their Tao heart and form godhood. The great ancestor of the Tao of 5 elements replied, that dangerous place should be the place where a false god died, so there is a large amount of false god's blood. However, it is also very dangerous inside. Back then, I was only wandering around the periphery, but I almost died. What dangers are there? Yi Xian asked. In fact, he already had the intention to cooperate, but before he went, it was better to ask first. That place is a huge blood-red forest. The plants inside will attack intruders. That's not the point. The point is that there is a kind of creature in there, which we call the divine blood demon. The 5 elements' grand ancestor said, this divine blood demon is said to have mutated from the blood of a false god. Its combat power is extraordinary. The power of the divine blood demon changed according to the amount of pseudo-god blood in his body. The more pseudo-god blood he had, the stronger he would be. Even I can only fight an ordinary sacred blood demon. If I encounter a sacred blood demon formed from 6 drops of pseudo-god blood, I'm afraid I'll be in danger of dying. That's not bad. Killing one can get a lot of pseudo-god blood, Yi Xian said. It's not that easy. Once the sacred blood demon dies, it will disappear from the world. You have to extract the pseudo-god blood as soon as possible. The great ancestor of the Tao of 5 elements shook his head. The corpse of this sacred blood demon dissipates very quickly. Even I can only extract 1 drop at a time. Only the extracted pseudo-god blood can be stored in the yin and yang ring. I see. Yi Xian nodded slightly. However, he had the god-level devouring system. If he encountered a sacred blood demon corpse, his extraction speed should be faster than the great ancestor of the Tao of 5 elements. The pseudo-god blood of this sacred blood demon that has not been extracted will return to the center of the blood-red forest. It is said that there is a terrifyingly powerful sacred blood demon king there, but no one knows what realm it is. At the mention of the sacred blood demon king, the great ancestor of the Tao of 5 elements couldn't help but shudder. With his strength, he could at most fight to a draw with a mid-first stage sacred blood demon formed from 5 drops of pseudo-god blood. Then how do you want to work together? Yi Xian asked curiously. You and I will work together and enter the blood-red forest together. You will be the scout, said the great ancestor of the Tao of 5 elements. The sword god's clone's defense was the strongest he had ever seen. He couldn't break through it after 3 days and 3 nights, so it should be enough to enter the blood-red forest. Oh, we can try, but before that, I need a few things, Yi Xian said. What things? The great ancestor of the Tao of 5 elements asked. A large amount of eternal fate stones, 5 elements god stones, and various eternal emperor artifacts. Yi Xian replied. You destroyed my sect and still want something from me? The great ancestor of the Tao of 5 elements was stunned. In that case, forget it. Yi Xian shrugged. Don't think that you can keep me here just because you're a half-step ruler. If I want to leave, even a ruler won't be able to stop me. Seeing how confident Yi Xian was, the great ancestor of the Tao of 5 elements swallowed his words and said, if you and I work together, we will definitely reap unexpected benefits. Fine. With that, he began to take out items from his yin and yang ring. These items were all for Yi Xian. It had to be said that the great ancestor of the Tao of 5 elements was extremely wealthy. Even if Yi Xian added up all the items he had obtained in the past few days,
It probably wouldn't be enough. Yi Xian put the items into his devouring space and said, "Very good. We can move now." The 5 elemental sex patriarch had given him the eternal fate stone alone, which was probably enough for him to break through to become a rank 8 eternal emperor lord. However, Yi Xian didn't immediately break through. During the 3 days the sword god's clone had been beaten up, his main body had plundered several factions and the divine sword art had already been restored. Yi Xian's plan was to use the divine sword art once when he reached the 7th rank eternal emperor realm. Then, he would use the eternal emperor weapon given by the Tao of 5 elements to recover its cooldown before breaking through. This way, he could use the divine sword art one more time. If he immediately broke through to the 8th rank eternal emperor realm, the items given by the great ancestor of the Tao of 5 elements might not be able to recover its cooldown. After going through so many things, Yi Xian had become more and more experienced. "All right, let's go." The great ancestor of the Tao of 5 elements nodded immediately after hearing Yi Xian's words. Then, he rushed out of the ruins of the Tao of 5 elements. The sect was nothing to the great ancestor of the Tao of 5 elements. He had already handed over all the affairs to the elders. As long as he broke through, the dead could all be revived. Chapter 2073. A few days later, the 5-element sex ancestor brought the sword god clone to a teleportation array. This teleportation array can teleport you to the outskirts of the 7th heaven blood forest. The 5-element sex ancestor activated the teleportation array. The Scarlet Forest had been a dangerous place for some time, so the experts in the surroundings were familiar with it. That was why they built a transmission array. Whoosh! After a while, the sword god clone and the 5-element sex ancestor landed. Before they left the teleportation palace, they smelled blood. The two walked out. In front of them was a boundless blood forest. "This is the blood forest," the 5-element sex ancestor said. "Yes, it looks dangerous." Yi Xian nodded. However, the more dangerous a place was, the more treasures there were. "Next, you will enter. If you encounter a divine blood demon, inform me immediately. We will avoid the strong ones, and I will deal with the weak ones. We will split the loot equally," the 5-element sex ancestor said. "Okay." Yi Xian nodded and let the sword god clone enter. The divine blood demons inside were at least half-step dominator level. With his current strength, he might not be able to fight them. Therefore, Yi Xian could use the 5-element sex ancestor to obtain some pseudo-god blood. At this time, Yi Xian had already entered the blood forest. According to the 5-element sex ancestor, this blood forest was the place where a pseudo-god had fallen. Therefore, the surrounding plants had mutated and would attack intruders. As expected, the sword god clone had just entered when it was attacked by these blood-colored plants. However, these blood-colored plants were too weak compared to the divine blood demons. Just the sword god clone alone could deal with a large area. The 5-element sword servants were the nemesis of these blood-colored plants, burning an entire area. In the beginning, Yi Xian did not encounter anything, so he let the old tree, Black Horn, and the others out to explore. The 5-element sex ancestor followed behind Yi Xian and acted according to Yi Xian's instructions. Just like that, 3 days passed. In the first 3 days, they were only at the edge of the Scarlet Forest. From now on, they might encounter sacred blood demons. In fact, Yi Xian wanted to meet the sacred blood demon king the most, because he had a trump card that was enough to kill a sacred blood demon king. Both the divine blood demons and the divine blood demon king were mutated from the blood of a false god. According to the great ancestor of the 5 elements, the divine blood demons did not have intelligence and fought with brute force. Therefore, if Yi Xian encountered a divine blood demon king, he might be able to kill him instantly with the divine sword spell. However, with Yi Xian's current level, he might not even have a chance to attack before he was beaten up like a sandbag by the sacred blood demon king. Right at this moment, "Young master, here!" Old Tree suddenly shouted. In the next moment, Yi Xian tore through the void and arrived beside the old tree. When Yi Xian landed, he saw a corpse in front of him. The head of the corpse had been cut off by a sharp weapon. It was already dead. However, the interspatial ring on its body was not taken away. It seemed that it was killed by a sacred blood demon. "Hey, this corpse is still warm. It hasn't been long since it died." Yi Xian raised an eyebrow. This meant that the sacred blood demon was nearby. "Whatever, let's collect it first." Yi Xian was shocked just now, so he forgot about the important thing, which was to collect the corpse. But in the next moment he frowned. Ding! Unable to collect. The system suddenly notified him. Unable to collect? What was going on? Yi Xian was a little confused. If it was an item that could not be collected, it would make sense. After all, there was the forbidden array. However, it was very rare for a corpse to be unable to be collected. Since the corpse could not be collected into the devour space, Yi Xian would not collect it. He would only collect the interspatial ring. However, the interspatial ring was on this corpse, so Yi Xian had to take it off. However, when he got closer, whoosh! Suddenly, a large amount of blood gushed out of the corpse. Then, it instantly condensed into a form and charged toward Yi Xian. What? Yi Xian was very surprised. Before he could react, the bloody figure was in front of him. It extended a scythe and slashed at the neck of the sword god clone. Whoosh! Whoosh! The sword god clone was sent flying. Fortunately, he had an invincible body. Otherwise, even a half-step dominator would have died on the spot. Now, Yi Xian finally understood what this thing was. It turned out to be the sacred blood demon that the Five Elements sect patriarch had mentioned. Old man, why didn't you say that sacred blood demons can possess corpses? Yi Xian hurriedly transmitted his voice. What? I didn't know that. The Five Elements sect patriarch replied in shock. He had come in alone before and had only encountered sacred blood demons alone. He had not encountered any corpses. However, it was only recently that sacred blood demons could possess corpses. At this time, the sword god clone, who had been sent flying, saw that the sacred blood demon had 3 drops of blood. This meant that it was only an early first-rank sacred blood demon. Ding! Flame-devouring unicorn has died. As the sword god clone was sent flying, the old tree was killed by the mantis-like sacred blood demon. Next, the sacred blood demon charged at Yi Xian. Tsk tisk. Yi Xian's lips curled. He released the old tree again to collect the corpse. This corpse was also a half-step dominator when it was alive. A half-step dominator had already fused their 99 fates with their Dao fruits to form a Dao heart. Thus, they did not have an eternal fate stone in their body. However, as a half-step dominator, how could they not have an eternal fate stone in their ring? Yi Xian immediately devoured the eternal fate stone. Although he did not break through, he did improve by quite a bit. However, he was still no match for this sacred blood demon. Sacred blood demons were also divided by strength. 1 drop of pseudo-divine blood was the weakest, followed by 2 drops, then 3 drops. The divine blood demon in front of Yi Xian was a divine blood demon formed from 3 drops of fake divine blood. Its strength was extraordinary. While the sword god clone was being beaten up, the Five Elements patriarch finally arrived. He attacked with all his strength and fought the sacred blood demon. However, this battle was a bit different from what Yi Xian had expected. Old man, didn't you say sacred blood demons couldn't dodge? Yi Xian couldn't help but ask. Bastard, these sacred blood demons must be gaining intelligence. Roared the Five Elements patriarch. The sacred blood demons he'd encountered before were indeed clumsy and unable to dodge. However, today, he'd encountered a sacred blood demon that was like a wild beast. This meant that sacred blood demons were harder to deal with than before. Fortunately, the Five Elements patriarch had already refined 5 drops of pseudo-divine blood. Together with the power of the 5 elements, he was stronger. Chapter 2074. As the divine blood demon was destroyed, the 3 drops of fake divine blood in its body also appeared. Seeing this, the patriarch of the 5 elements quickly wrapped 1 drop with his saint power. Yi Xian was also prepared. When the divine blood demon died, he quickly came over and collected it. Ding! Unable to collect. Unfortunately, the other 2 drops of fake divine blood could not be collected. Before the system's notification ended, they turned into a cloud of blood mist and flew north. Yi Xian originally wanted to use the devouring system to refine the fake divine blood, but now it seemed that it would not work. If he wanted to refine the fake divine blood, he would have to wrap it with his saint power like the patriarch of the 5 elements had done to prevent it from dissipating. However, Yi Xian was only a level 7 eternal emperor and could not do that for the time being. At this time, the patriarch of the 5 elements was refining the fake divine blood. Looking at his back, Yi Xian could not help but have a thought. This old guy is refining the fake divine blood. If I use the divine sword technique now, I might be able to kill him. Yi Xian thought to himself. However, the patriarch of the 5 elements was quite strong and could defeat the divine blood demon. If he used the divine sword technique to kill him, he would have 1 less fighter and 1 less cooldown time for the divine sword technique. Of course, if the sneak attack failed, this cooperation might be over. After thinking about it, Yi Xian decided to take a look first. More than an hour later. Phew! Finally done. The patriarch of the 5 elements breathed a sigh of relief and put the drop of fake divine blood into his interspatial ring. In fact, while refining the fake divine blood, he was also vigilant of his surroundings. This was because they were in the Scarlet Forest. If another divine blood demon appeared, it would be very dangerous. At that time, this drop of fake divine blood would dissipate between heaven and earth like the previous 2 drops. Old guy, it was a pleasure to work with you for the first time. However, shouldn't you give me this drop of fake divine blood as a token of appreciation? Yi Xian narrowed his eyes and said, Humph. Although you found the divine blood demon, without me, do you think you can kill it? Moreover, this drop of divine blood demon was refined by me, so it should be given to me first. The 5 element sect's great ancestor coldly snorted. Hearing this, the corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. He shrugged and said, If that's the case, I'll give you this drop of pseudo-divine blood. At the same time, our cooperation ends here. Patriarch 5 Elements was shocked. He did not expect Yi Xian to threaten him with this matter. Don't push your luck. I'm someone who has entered the Scarlet Forest. Even without you, I can still obtain the pseudo-divine blood, said the 5 Element sect's old ancestor. What a joke. The value of a single drop of pseudo-divine blood was something that even the entire Tao of 5 elements could not compare to. How was it possible for him to give the pseudo-god blood to Yi Xian? Since that's the case, I'll take my leave. After Yi Xian finished speaking, he broke through the void and prepared to leave. If the first cooperation was not pleasant, then there was no need for cooperation. What if the 5 stars Grand Ancestor refined another drop and still refused to give it to him? If that was the case, it would be better for him to leave as soon as possible so that he would not draw his sword and kill the Grand Ancestor in a fit of anger. Patriarch 5 Element Sect's old ancestor was stunned when he saw that Yi Xian really intended to leave. After thinking quickly in his heart for a moment, he shouted, Wait! What's wrong? Yi Xian turned around and said, Boy, the pseudo-divine blood is good stuff. Don't lose it. Patriarch 5 Element Sect's old ancestor finally decided to compromise and threw a drop of pseudo-divine blood to Yi Xian. However, this drop of pseudo-divine blood was not the same one that had just been refined. The 5 Element Sect's old ancestor had obtained this drop many years ago and used the 5 Element Stone to open up the 5 Elements vein. Therefore, the energy contained in this drop was much less than the one that had just been refined. Yi Xian also noticed this, but he did not say anything and just kept the drop of pseudo-divine blood. Happy cooperation, Yi Xian said with a smile. In fact, he was not playing hard to get just now. He really wanted to leave. If he left, he could just go back and level up. As long as he broke through to the 9th grade Eternal Emperor realm, he might be able to establish a foothold in the Scarlet Forest. However, it was best that the 5 Element Sect's old ancestor could compromise because it would save him a lot of time. Ding! The host has devoured a drop of pseudo-divine blood. Yi Xian did not hesitate and devoured the drop of pseudo-divine blood. Yes, he devoured it. This drop of pseudo-divine blood was devoured by the divine devouring system and turned into a large number of divine devouring crystals. Only after condensing a Tao heart and breaking through to the half-step sovereign realm could one use the pseudo-divine blood to break through to the first-grade half-step sovereign realm. Therefore, this drop of fake divine blood was of no use to Yi Xian's cultivation. However, after he exchanged it for divine devouring crystals, he could do a lot of things. I didn't expect to have so many divine devouring crystals. This is great. Yi Xian was overjoyed. There were many things that could be exchanged for in the divine devouring system, such as divine pills and miraculous medicines. However, these were not very useful to Yi Xian at the moment. Therefore, Yi Xian exchanged all the divine devouring crystals for 5 elements divine stones, and used them to strengthen the 5 element swordsmen. Ding! The 5 element swordsmen have been successfully strengthened. A system notification sounded in Yi Xian's mind. The five-element swordsmen were currently Yi Xian's strongest swordsmen. After being strengthened, their strength had increased by more than 3 times. After all, that was a drop of pseudo-divine blood. Yi Xian immediately asked the five-element swordsmen to spar with Old Tree and the others in the devouring system. In the end, the five-element swordsmen easily killed Old Tree, Black Horn, and the undead swordsman. Even with the help of the Black Gold swordsman, the result was the same. Strong, they were simply too strong.
If I can get a few more drops of pseudo-divine blood, my strength might be close to that of the five-element sect's old ancestor.
Then, I won't need to cooperate with him. Yi Xian thought to himself. Then, he separated from the five-element sect's old ancestor and continued to explore. He kept all the corpses he encountered in the devouring system. These were all half-step sovereigns' corpses. However, these corpses' cultivation levels were not high, and there was no divine blood in their interspatial rings. On the 7th day, Yi Xian encountered another strange corpse. Without another word, Yi Xian went up to probe. As expected, there was a divine blood yao hiding in the corpse. Bang! The sword god's clone was sent flying, but at the same time, he released the Old Tree, who happened to be right next to the corpse. Keep. The corpse was kept in the Old Tree's devouring system. Hey, there's a drop of pseudo-divine blood? What a haul! At this moment, Yi Xian's eyes suddenly lit up. Not only did he obtain the Eternal Destiny Stone, but he also obtained a drop of pseudo-divine blood. Awesome! He immediately devoured the drop of pseudo-divine blood and exchanged it for 5 elements divine stones to strengthen the 5 elements divine servants. Chapter 2075. Sacred Blood Demon? I don't believe I can't kill you. Yi Xian's eyes flashed as he turned Megatron into the Beast God Bell. As soon as the Beast God Bell appeared, Sacred Blood Demon's strength decreased by 80%. Sacred Blood Demon was not human, so the Sword God's constitution was useless against him. However, this was a good thing for Yi Xian. After all, the Beast God Bell could suppress 80% of his strength. In an instant, Sacred Blood Demon's speed was greatly reduced. Then, Old Tree and the others attacked together. The 5-element sect's grand ancestor must have heard the commotion. Quickly finish him off. Yi Xian's eyes flashed. This time, he decided to use the divine sword technique. However, Sacred Blood Demon's strength was not bad. Facing the besiegement, he was still at ease. He even killed Old Tree, Black Horn, Black Gold Swordsman, and Immortal Swordsman. Boom! At this time, Sacred Blood Demon sent the 5-element swordsman flying with a sickle. Fortunately, the 5-element swordsman used the power of 5 elements to neutralize most of the attack. Otherwise, he would have been killed by Sacred Blood Demon like Old Tree and the others. Whoosh! Seeing that the 5-element swordsman was still alive, Sacred Blood Demon immediately rushed up, ready to kill him. At this time, Divine Sword Technique. Yi Xian opened his eyes wide and directly used his trump card. A divine sword slashed down on the 5-element swordsman's head. Just then, Sacred Blood Demon rushed in front of the 5-element swordsman. Rip! This slash split Sacred Blood Demon and the 5-element swordsman in half. At the same time, Yi Xian quickly devoured the Eternal Emperor weapons to recover the cooldown of the divine sword technique. Then, he devoured the Eternal Destiny Stone. Ding! The host has made a breakthrough. The host is now an 8th grade Eternal Emperor. He had directly broken through to the peak of the 8th grade Eternal Emperor realm. He was only 1 step away from the 9th grade Eternal Emperor realm. After the breakthrough, Yi Xian's speed increased a lot. Before the 3 drops of pseudo-divine blood appeared, he rushed over. He quickly wrapped 1 drop of pseudo-divine blood with Saint Power and then refined it with the divine devouring system. As for the other 2 drops of fake divine blood, they had already dissipated into the air. They turned into 2 wisps of bloody mist and flew into the distance. Ding! Quasi-divine blood has been successfully refined. The system prompted. Huff, huff, with my current level, it's a bit of a stretch to wrap the fake god blood with the Saint Power. Fortunately, my recovery speed is very fast. Otherwise, the fake god blood would have burst out of the Saint Power in the next moment. Yi Xian breathed a sigh of relief. After all, he was only a rank 8 Eternal Emperor. Being able to use his Saint Power to envelop the pseudo-divine blood for a short period of time was already quite impressive.
The reason the Five Elements Patriarch was able to hold on for more than an hour was because he was a half-step ruler and had refined 5 drops of pseudo-divine blood.
How could Yi Xian compare to him? The source of Yi Xian's strength was not the sacred power, but the bloodline. Another sacred blood demon?
After Yi Xian finished cleaning up, the 5 Elements sect's old ancestor asked.
No, it's just a powerful blood-colored plant, Yi Xian replied.
Now, he already had the strength to kill a sacred blood demon, but he had to rely on the divine sword technique. Right now, the divine sword technique only had 1 cooldown time left, so he still needed the 5 Elements sect's old ancestor.
Continue. Yi Xian began to hurry on his way.
He was thinking that it would be best to find some more corpses. This way, he might be able to pile up another cooldown time for the divine sword technique. In addition, he had also reached the peak of rank 8 Eternal Emperor. He was just a little bit away from breaking through to rank 9 Eternal Emperor. At that time, he might have the strength to fight a sacred blood demon. Following that, Yi Xian explored for another 4 or 5 days. Unfortunately, he only found a corpse along the way, and there was nothing there. According to Yi Xian's analysis, this corpse was not killed by the sacred blood demon, but by a sneak attack by his own people.
What a pity, what a pity! Yi Xian shook his head helplessly.
If this corpse was killed by the sacred blood demon, then he might be able to break through to rank 9 Eternal Emperor. However, there would always be opportunities.
There was no hurry.
Sure enough, on the second day after he continued to move forward, there was a loud rumbling sound in front of him. This was because someone was fighting. In the Scarlet Forest, the only people who could fight were those who had differences of opinion or those who fought with sacred blood demons.
Yi Xian immediately rushed over.
When he arrived, he saw 2 figures fighting with a sacred blood demon. These 2 were only rank 1/2 sovereigns, but that sacred blood demon was mutated from 6 drops of pseudo-divine blood. Its strength was very strong. Tisk, tsk, I'm going to be a fisherman again.
Yi Xian grinned and watched quietly.
The 2 rank 1/2 sovereigns had already seen Yi Xian, but Yi Xian was only in rank 8 Eternal Emperor. It was already a miracle that he did not die in the Scarlet Forest. How could they expect him to help?
Rip!
Rip! Soon, the 2 men died one by one under the scythe of the sacred blood demon. Then, the sacred blood demon's blood-red eyes fell on Yi Xian.
Whoosh!
A gust of wind suddenly appeared. The sacred blood demon charged toward Yi Xian.
Haha, it's mine.
Yi Xian laughed and quickly released Old Tree and the others to put away the 2 corpses. The things in the interspatial ring were enough to restore the divine sword technique once. It was also enough for him to break through to rank 9 Eternal Emperor, or even rank 99 Heaven's Mandate, which was the peak of rank 9 Eternal Emperor. Immediately, he ordered the 5 Element swordsmen to block the sacred blood demon. Divine sword technique. Yi Xian was ready to repeat the scene of that day and kill the sacred blood demon and the 5 Element swordsmen together. However, this sacred blood demon was much stronger than the previous one. The divine sword technique fell and only killed the 5 Element swordsmen, while the sacred blood demon only lost one of its arms.
F***ck. I wasted 1 time.
Yi Xian cursed and quickly used the items to restore the cooldown of the divine sword technique. Then he broke through again.
Ding!
The host's current fate ranking is rank 99.
Ding!
The host has broken through and is now a rank 9 Eternal Emperor.
Ding!
The host can choose to devour a drop of pseudo-divine blood to break through to rank 1/2 sovereign. When the system notification sounded, Yi Xian raised his eyebrows. For others, even after reaching rank 99, they would need to fuse their Dao fruit with their Dao heart to form a Dao heart. Once the Dao heart was formed, they would be a half sovereign. However, they could only be considered a half sovereign. Only by refining a drop of pseudo-divine blood could they be considered a rank 1/2 sovereign. Unexpectedly, the divine devouring system helped Yi Xian skip this step. As long as he devoured a drop of pseudo-divine blood at rank 99, he could break through to rank 1/2 sovereign. Yi Xian immediately devoured the drop of pseudo-divine blood. Chapter 2076.
Ding!
Host has refined a drop of pseudo-divine blood and formed a Dao heart. Host has broken through to first stage half-step sovereign. As the system notification sounded out, Yi Xian felt as if the environment within his body had undergone a tremendous change. His strength had increased by at least 20 times.
Haha, divine blood demon, right? Yi Xian suddenly laughed 3 times. He released Old Shu and Black Horn, who had also broken through to the half-step ruler level. In addition, there was also the Black Gold Sword Attendant and the Undying Sword Attendant. As for the 5-element sword servants, they had been killed by his divine sword art and could only be released the next day. Boom! Now that everyone had broken through to the first stage half-step sovereign realm, their offensive prowess had skyrocketed. Everyone attacked at the same time, directly killing the divine blood demon. This time, Yi Xian did not even summon Wei Zhentian, so this divine blood demon was almost at its peak. From Eternal Emperor to half-step sovereign, it's really a leap. Now, I have the ability to establish myself in the Scarlet Forest. Even if I don't use the divine sword art, I can still obtain the pseudo-divine blood. Yi Xian's lips curled up slightly. This meant that he did not need to work with the 5-element sect patriarch anymore. However, he did not get too excited. He had more important things to do. Whoosh! After the divine blood demon transformed from 6 drops of fake god blood died, the fake god blood in his body appeared.
Yi Xian had already rushed to its side and wrapped the 3 drops of pseudo-divine blood with his saint power.
The 5-element sect patriarch could also wrap the 3 drops of pseudo-divine blood, but he could not refine all 3 at the same time. If he did so, he might not be able to refine even 1 drop. After all, it would take him more than an hour to do so. However, Yi Xian was different. After wrapping the 3 drops of pseudo-divine blood, he immediately used the divine devouring system to refine them. The refining speed was much faster than the 5-element sect patriarchs. Just as Yi Xian's saint power was about to run out, the 3 drops of pseudo-divine blood were successfully refined. Even second-stage half-step sovereigns could not refine 3 drops of pseudo-divine blood in one go. Haha, 3 drops of pseudo-divine blood. Awesome! Yi Xian grinned and swallowed the 3 drops of faux god blood. However, after swallowing the 3 drops of fake god blood, his strength did not increase much. That's strange.
I've already refined 4 drops of pseudo-divine blood, which is only slightly less than the 5 drops from the 5-element sect's old ancestor.
Why? Yi Xian took a closer look and was immediately shocked. What the hell? Others would need 99 drops of quasi-divine blood to break through from rank 1 half-step sovereign to peak rank 9 half-step sovereign. As for him, he actually needed 999 drops. The amount of fake god blood he needed was actually 10 times more than the others. What the F***CK? The amount of fake god blood I need is 10 times more than the others. But fortunately, it would take years for others to refine a drop of fake god blood, but I only need a moment. Yi Xian reacted quickly. He had the divine devouring system. As long as he had enough quasi-divine blood, he could quickly break through to become a rank 9 undying dominator. Or even a false god. The 5-element sect's old ancestor, who was following behind Yi Xian, heard the battle and immediately asked. No, I didn't encounter any divine blood demons, but you can come over. Yi Xian said to the 5-element sect's old ancestor. Not long after, the 5-element sect's old ancestor came over and looked at Yi Xian. However, in the next moment, he turned pale with fright. Half-step sovereign? The 5-element sect's old ancestor was shocked. When he first brought Yi Xian to the Scarlet Forest, Yi Xian was only a rank 8 Eternal Emperor. Now, he had actually broken through to become a half-step sovereign? How was this possible? Old man, I said at that time that I would be able to cure you in less than a month. You thought I was exaggerating, but now do you still think so? Yi Xian revealed a smile. The 5-element sect's old ancestor swallowed his saliva. This was simply inconceivable. However, this was the truth because Yi Xian was standing in front of him. Humph, don't think that you can fight me like this. The 5-element sect's old ancestor snorted. We'll know after we try, but I'm sure that you'll pay the price in blood. Yi Xian's eyes flashed as he released the 5-element sword attendants. All of them were half-step sovereigns. This time, the 5-element sect's old ancestor was shocked. Even with his strength, he could not cause any harm to Yi Xian. Now that he was facing so many half-step sovereigns, how could he? Go! The 5-element sect's old ancestor made a prompt decision and turned to leave. Unfortunately, Yi Xian was 1 step faster and flashed behind him. By the time he turned around, Yi Xian had already made his move. Rip! A sword light flashed, and the 5-element sect's old ancestor's head flew into the air.
dead.
After he died, Yi Xian put away his corpse and muttered, "Since you told me this secret, I won't let you die in vain. In the future, I will revive you so that you can continue to live in the devouring space." After saying this, he devoured the drop of pseudo-divine blood in the 5 elements sex-old ancestors' yin and yang ring. His strength had undergone a slight change again. Other first-stage half-step sovereigns only needed to refine 11 drops of pseudo-divine blood. Yi Xian, on the other hand, could refine 111 drops. Therefore, a single drop of pseudo-divine blood had little effect on him. However, he had a devouring ability that others did not have. He immediately continued to move. In the following days, he continued to travel through the Scarlet Forest. The Old Tree, Black Horn, Black Gold Sword Attendants, Undying Sword Attendants, and 5 Element Sword Attendants could all take charge of collecting pseudo-divine blood for Yi Xian. In a short few days, Yi Xian had collected more than 100 drops of pseudo-divine blood. After devouring all of them, he reached second-stage half-step sovereign realm. Of course, this was all thanks to the divine-grade devouring system's refining speed. Otherwise, he could only refine 1 drop of pseudo-divine blood at a time. After breaking through to second-stage half-step sovereign realm, the refining speed has increased by quite a bit. However, the amount of pseudo-divine blood required is still the same. My breakthrough speed is probably much faster than before. Yi Xian raised his eyebrows. Others would find it harder and harder to refine pseudo-divine blood. Although he needed 10 times as much pseudo-divine blood, devouring it was equivalent to refining it. Therefore, he did not need to worry about this problem. Simply put, the half-step sovereign realm was more difficult at the beginning, but it would get easier and easier as he progressed. Just like this, another 2 days passed. Yi Xian relied on his extraordinary methods to hunt down a large number of divine blood demons. After devouring the pseudo-divine blood he obtained, he broke through to third-stage half-step sovereign realm. At this time, he was wondering if he should let his main body enter and hunt the divine blood demons. However, this was just a thought. His main body was different from the sword god clone. He could die. The divine blood demons in this blood forest relied on physical attacks. Even with the void spirit divine armor and black gold divine armor, he would still be in danger. Therefore, it was better to wait outside. Chapter 2077. Right now, Yi Xian could already kill more than 30 drops of pseudo-divine blood that had mutated into divine blood demons. However, he could only refine less than 10 of these drops at once. Therefore, he might as well go and kill about 10 drops of divine blood demons. That would be faster. However, that was what most people thought. They were also pacing around the periphery of the blood forest. However, Yi Xian's favorite wasn't hunting divine blood demons, but humans. This was because they more or less had pseudo-divine blood in their interspatial rings. One had to admit that the blood forest was very famous. Many half-step dominators had entered. It just so happened that these people benefited Yi Xian. With Yi Xian's current strength, he could even fight a rank 5 half-step dominator. In the periphery he was the heavens. Not a single person who was seen by him was spared. Soon, he broke through to rank 5 half-step dominator. Right now, he had refined more than 560 drops of divine blood. This amount of pseudo-divine blood was enough for 5 people to break through to the dominator realm. Of course, while pseudo-divine blood was easy to obtain, refining it wasn't. Even if one had a large amount of pseudo-divine blood, it would be useless if they couldn't refine it. RIP! Somewhere in the blood forest, Yi Xian finished off an unlucky rank 3 half-step dominator with a single slash. Then he checked it. TCH, only 10 drops of pseudo-divine blood. Yi Xian shook his head helplessly and then started to devour. Right now, he had devoured nearly 600 drops of pseudo-divine blood. If he worked harder, he could break through to rank 6 half-step dominator. At that time, he would go to the blood forest to take a look and see what that divine blood demon king looked like. However, right at this moment. Rumble! Suddenly, a series of loud noises came from the horizon. Yi Xian listened carefully and found that the scale of the battle wasn't small. It was probably a group battle. He didn't know if it was human versus human, or human versus divine blood demons. In any case, Yi Xian liked this kind of battle. Immediately, he rushed toward the source of the sound. After a short while, he saw nearly 20 figures fighting. Half of them were humans, and their cultivation was around rank 4 or 5 half-step sovereigns. One of them was a rank 6 half-step sovereign. On the other side, it was the divine blood demon. However, among these divine blood demons, there was a very special divine blood demon. I will stall the divine blood devil. You guys finish him quickly. The rank 6 half-step ruler roared furiously. Hearing this, Xianxia took a closer look and found that there were more than 70 drops of pseudo-divine blood in the large sacred blood demon. A rank 7 dominator rank divine blood demon. No, not a divine blood demon, but a divine blood demon general. This was also the strongest person Xianxia had seen since entering the Scarlet Forest. This battle was extremely intense. The figures of both sides flashed, causing Xianxia's eyes to be dazzled. However, he only watched for a while before he knew the outcome of this battle. The humans were probably going to be wiped out. At this time, several divine blood demons had already killed their opponents. The originally evenly matched battle was instantly broken with the deaths of these few people. Xianxia watched from afar. He had only met by chance, so there was no need for him to save them. One had to know that he was also a hunter. Asking him to be a savior, what kind of joke was that? What he needed to do was wait for these humans to die before he made a move. Simply put, he was waiting to reap the benefits. However, things were not that simple. Swish! A crisp sound suddenly rang out. Xianxia took a closer look and found that the rank 6 half-step sovereign was still no match for the rank 7 divine blood devil general and had been killed. Once he died, the others were a motley crew that was instantly killed by the divine blood devil general. The ground was littered with corpses. The divine blood devil general glanced at the blood-red eyes, then transformed into a beam of bloody light that shot into the body of the rank 6 half-step sovereign. In the next instant, it shot out again. However, when it left that corpse, it had already turned into a dried corpse. Then, it used the same method to suck the blood out of all the corpses. When it reappeared, Xianxia saw that there was actually one more drop of pseudo-divine blood in its body. Heavens! This divine blood devil general absorbed the blood of humans and condensed pseudo-divine blood? Xianxia raised his eyebrows in shock. What was going on? However, he could not be bothered to care so much and directly shot out. Beast God Clock, suppress. Xianxia quickly summoned Wei Zhentian. Instantly, these divine blood devils and the divine blood devil general had 80% of their strength suppressed. Whoosh! 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 Old Tree and the others instantly charged out. As for the sword god clone, it had already flashed behind the divine blood devil general. Pucci! In an instant, a powerful attack killed the divine blood devil general that was only a rank 7 half-step sovereign. However, what surprised Xianxia was that of the 78 drops of fake divine blood in the divine blood demon general's body, other than the 10 drops that Xianxia had wrapped around with his saint energy, only 50 drops had dissipated. The rest were actually still in the divine blood demon general's body. Ding! Refining successful. A system notification sounded in Xianxia's mind. He was a little surprised. He forced the pseudo-divine blood out of the divine blood devil general's body and then collected it. Could this pseudo-divine blood be condensed from the blood of humans that the divine blood devil general absorbed? Xianxia thought to himself. However, he did not think too deeply about it and directly swallowed the pseudo-divine blood. Ding! The host has broken through. The host is now a rank 6 half-step sovereign. Xianxia's realm increased again. In fact, there was no need for him to stay in the Scarlet Forest any longer. At his level, there were many pseudo-divine blood. The difficult part was refining it. However, he wanted to see the divine blood devil king. Moreover, this was the place where the pseudo-divine had fallen. Perhaps there would be some unexpected fortuitous encounters. Otherwise, why would those who did not lack the pseudo-divine blood enter the Scarlet Forest? Wasn't it for the inheritance of the pseudo-divine? Next, he killed the divine blood devil immortal beasts one by one to refine the pseudo-divine blood. Each of them gave him more than 10 drops of pseudo-divine blood. This time, he had really profited. In just one trip, he had obtained a lot of pseudo-divine blood. At this moment, Xianxia suddenly saw the pseudo-divine blood dissipate into wisps of blood mist and drift into the distance. Xianxia's eyes flashed. He decided to follow and see. However, the blood mist drifted very quickly. Even the saint power could not stop it. It disappeared in the blink of an eye. However, Xianxia continued to move north. Along the way, he encountered some pseudo-divine blood and harvested all of it. Now that he was a rank 6 half-step sovereign,
He could refine more than 10 drops of pseudo-divine blood in one go.
Chapter 2078.
However, just as Yi Xian was about to break through the 800 mark, he sensed a thick scent of blood in front of him.
Yi Xian raised an eyebrow.
Using the Eye of Revelation, he discovered that there were more than 100 divine blood demons.
I've struck gold. His eyes lit up. There were so many divine blood demons. If he could kill them one by one, it would be a huge fortune. Immediately, he had the old tree move out and lure the divine blood demons. As expected, with such a large group, if there was any disturbance in the surroundings, they would naturally not attack together. The first time, he had only lured 3 divine blood demons. Yi Xian killed the 3 divine blood demons and extracted 40 drops of divine blood.
Ding!
Host has broken through.
Host is now a rank 7 half-step ruler. One needed 111 drops of divine blood to break through once.
If Yi Xian could kill all these divine blood demons, he could at least break through to the ruler realm. Next, he had the old tree lure a few more divine blood demons over and kill them. The third time, and a few more times. After the third time, he had broken through to rank 8 half-step ruler realm. With 10 more divine blood demons, he could break through to rank 9 half-step ruler realm. However, at this moment, whoosh! Suddenly, a gust of wind sounded in Yi Xian's ears.
He turned his head and saw a scarlet scythe slashing toward him.
Poof! The scarlet scythe slashed the sword god clone's neck. The powerful force instantly sent him flying. A ruler realm divine blood demon? Yi Xian sensed it and was frightened. Those divine blood demons were at most rank 8 half-step rulers. But now, he actually saw a ruler realm divine blood demon? No, this was not a divine blood demon, nor was it a divine blood demon general. It was a divine blood demon king. This was because Yi Xian could not see through this divine blood demon. Who knew how many drops of divine blood there were inside? If this was not a divine blood demon king, what could it be? Hiss! Hiss! Seeing that its scythe had not killed Yi Xian, the divine blood demon king's eyes darted around. Once again, it turned into a bloody blur and slashed at the sword god clone's neck. This attack still did not injure the sword god clone. I finally met you. Dang! The corners of the sword god avatar's mouth curled up slightly, and he immediately released Old Shu and the others. Kill! However, what surprised Yi Xian was that Old Shu, Black Horn, the black gold sword attendant, and the undying sword attendant were like clay chickens and pottery dogs in front of this divine blood demon king. In the blink of an eye, they were completely annihilated. Even the 5-element sword attendants were instantly killed. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. He didn't know what realm this divine blood demon king had reached. 2. Puff. Bang! 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 In the following battle, the sword god clone was in a passive position. He could not fight back at all. In the distance, the divine blood demons and divine blood demon generals were watching because their king was dealing with the enemy. However, no matter how strong this divine blood demon king was, it could not hurt the sword god clone at all. At this time, the divine blood demon king's eyes darted around. It turned into a bloody light and left, flashing into the middle of the group of divine blood demons and divine blood demon generals. The next moment, Yi Xian saw the bodies of these divine blood demons explode. The divine blood demon king's body instantly merged with the divine blood demon king's body. The divine blood demon king was absorbing other divine blood demons to increase its strength. Seeing this, Yi Xian immediately understood. This divine blood demon king had probably gained sentience. That was why it knew how to absorb its own kind to strengthen itself. After absorbing so much divine blood, the divine blood demon king's strength increased several times. It immediately charged at the sword god clone. Unfortunately, it still could not hurt the sword god clone. Too scary. Yi Xian sighed inwardly. He was hesitating whether to use the divine sword technique or not. However, this divine blood demon king was much faster than him. After absorbing the other divine blood demons, its speed was so fast that even he could not catch up to it. It would be a waste to use the divine sword technique. Besides, even if the divine sword technique killed this divine blood demon king, it could only extract a dozen drops of divine blood at most. It was not worth it. Humph, I won't waste time with you. Let's go. Yi Xian thought to himself. He was ready to take the sword god clone away. However, at this time, a system notification sounded in his mind. Ding! The host has triggered a random mission. Kill the Divine Blood Demon King in the Bloody Forest. A random mission was actually triggered at this time. Kill my ass. Let's go. The next moment, the Divine Blood Demon King lost its target because the Sword God clone was taken back by Yi Xian. At this time, somewhere outside the Bloody Forest, that Divine Blood Demon King has already gained sentience. It knows how to let other Divine Blood Demons kill humans to gather Divine Blood Demon King's blood, and then absorb the Divine Blood Demons to increase its strength. It looks like it won't be easy to deal with. Yi Xian thought to himself as he looked at the Scarlet Kill character in the sky. Soon, the Bloody Forest would probably become hell. Anyone who saw the Divine Blood Demon King would probably not be able to survive. That Divine Blood Demon King is hunting others. I just need to avoid it. I want to see if you can increase your strength faster than me. Yi Xian thought to himself. He broke through the void and entered the Bloody Forest again. In the following time, he continued to wander the Bloody Forest and hunt Divine Blood Demons. In less than a day, he broke through to the 9th stage half-step Sovereign Realm. He was only one step away from the Sovereign Realm. He turned his head and looked at the Scarlet Kill character in the sky. He wondered what realm the Divine Blood Demon King was at now. However, he did not think too much about it and continued to search for Divine Blood Demons. Another day passed. Ding! The host has broken through. The host is now a first-stage Sovereign Realm. Finally, Yi Xian broke through to the Sovereign Realm. However, when he was a half-step Sovereign, he needed 111 drops of False God blood to advance one level. Now that he had broken through to the Sovereign Realm, he needed 1111 drops of False God blood to advance one level. Therefore, his breakthrough speed slowed down again. Now that you've broken through to the Sovereign Realm, let me go and meet you. Yi Xian thought to himself as he rushed toward the Scarlet Kill character. Previously, he had only encountered a 9th stage half-step Sovereign Realm human in the Bloody Forest. Now that he had broken through to the Sovereign Realm, he could practically call himself the King of the Bloody Forest. Of course, he did not know how many Divine Blood Demons the Divine Blood Demon King had absorbed or what realm it had reached. However, the Sword God's clone was immortal. So what if he met it? The Divine Blood Demon King's movements were irregular, but Yi Xian moved in a straight line. He estimated that he could probably fight that Divine Blood Demon King. Chapter 2079. It took 3 whole days to catch up to the Divine Blood Beast King. In these 3 days, Yi Xian's cultivation had broken through from early stage to middle stage. The amount of false god blood in his body had already reached 1,600 drops. After being strengthened by the false god blood, his body was as hard as a rock. Even if he didn't use the Void Spirit Godly Armor and the Black Gold Godly Armor, he would probably be able to withstand the attacks of a half-step Dominator-level Divine Blood Beast King. At this time, Yi Xian estimated the distance. In about a minute, he would be able to come into contact with the Divine Blood Beast King. A minute later, Yi Xian finally caught up to the Divine Blood Beast King. At this time, the two were looking at each other. Hiss! The Divine Blood Beast King's body was made of blood. The sound of flowing blood was like that of a venomous snake. It had already unlocked its intelligence, so it recognized Yi Xian. Back then, it didn't kill Yi Xian and let Yi Xian escape. Today, Yi Xian took the initiative to come to him. Just nice. Yi Xian also looked at the Divine Blood Beast King. He discovered that the Divine Blood Beast King's body had grown by at least half. It seemed that its strength had also increased by a lot. Kill! At this time, Yi Xian released the Old Tree and Black Horn. They attacked the Divine Blood Beast King from 3 directions. Xiao! The Divine Blood Beast King moved at the same time. It first dealt with the Old Tree, then Black Horn. Then, it slashed at Yi Xian's neck with its scythe. Unfortunately, it didn't hit Yi Xian's main body, but the Sword God clone. So strong. Its attack power is at least at the level of a 5th stage Dominator. Yi Xian couldn't help but sigh. He was only a 1st stage Dominator now, but the Divine Blood Beast King was already a 5th stage Dominator. Wasn't this speed of improvement a bit too fast? After all, Yi Xian only leveled up so fast because of the God-level devouring system. However, he couldn't care so much anymore. Fight! Rumble! The Sword God's avatar kept summoning the Old Tree and Black Horn to fight the Divine Blood Demon King. As for the Black Gold Sword Servants, the Immortal Sword Servants, and the 5 Element Sword Servants, Yi Xian kept them on standby, waiting for the right opportunity because they had cooldowns after death. The battle was extremely intense. Although Yi Xian had broken through to become a rank 1 sovereign, his strength was still far from that of a divine blood beast king. Even with the help of the old tree and black horn, he still couldn't make up for the difference. Humph, I have a trump card. Yi Xian immediately summoned the black gold sword servants, undying sword servants, and 5-element sword servants. Then, together with the old tree and black cove, they would launch a 6-sided pincer attack. Swish! The Holy Blood Demon King was not afraid at all. He rushed toward the nearest black gold sword servant. Yi Xian took the opportunity to summon Wei Zhentian. Beast God Clock, suppress him. In the blink of an eye, Wei Zhentian turned into the Beast God Bell.
The next moment, the Demon King of Divine Blood, who had just arrived in front of the black gold swordsman and was about to raise its scythe to attack, was greatly slowed down.
Divine Sword Technique. Yi Xian's eyes flashed. He took out the Sky Splitter Divine Sword and slashed down. He had tried and tested this move many times.
Whether it was the Divine Blood Demon, the Divine Blood Demon General, or the Divine Blood Demon King in front of him, they all fought in close combat.
However, he had underestimated the Divine Blood Demon King's strength. The Divine Sword Technique slashed down and hit the black gold sword servants, but not the Divine Blood Demon King. What? Yi Xian was shocked. He realized that the Divine Blood Demon King suddenly increased its speed when it was about to be hit by the Sky Splitter Divine Sword. It seemed that the Divine Blood Demon King was also holding back. In the battle just now, it hadn't used its full strength. Therefore, the Sky Splitter Divine Sword missed. However, how could Yi Xian not have a backup plan? Swish! There were already many attacks on the Divine Blood Demon King's path of retreat. Among them, the 5-element sword servants' attacks were the most powerful. With a muffled sound, the Divine Blood Demon King's bloody body was split in half by the 5-element sword servants' attacks. It hit! Yi Xian raised an eyebrow. This was the first time he had hit a Divine Blood Demon King. Although the Divine Sword Technique did not hit, it was already very good that it could injure the Divine Blood Demon King. The Divine Blood Demon King was split in half by the 5-element sword servants' attacks. The pseudo-divine blood in its body was also split in half. However, after that, Yi Xian was a bit surprised. He saw that the two halves of the Divine Blood Demon King's body actually reformed with a swish. Now, there were 2 Divine Blood Demon Kings. Of course, the divine blood in its body was split in half. Not dead? Again. Yi Xian immediately ordered an attack. The Divine Blood Demon King was suppressed by the Beast God Bell and injured by the 5-element sword servants. It had to split, so its strength naturally decreased. Under the attacks of Yi Xian and the others, its 2 bloody bodies split again into more than 10. Damn, are you an earthworm? Yi Xian was helpless. However, he did not believe that the Divine Blood Demon King was immortal, so he continued to attack. Soon, this Divine Blood Demon King had split into more than 100. This was not the point. The point was that these 100 Divine Blood Demon Kings actually started to merge. In the blink of an eye, 4 of them had merged. Still want to recover? Yi Xian raised an eyebrow. He quickly attacked and split the Divine Blood Demon King into countless parts again. However, this time, the Divine Blood Demon Kings did not merge again. Instead, they scattered. More than 100 Divine Blood Demon Kings scattered like waves, fleeing in all directions. Damn, what should I do? Yi Xian was helpless. He did not know which one to chase. Even the death warrant had disappeared after the Sacred Blood Demon King split up. Helpless, Yi Xian did not care too much. He ordered Old Tree and the others to attack. More than 100 Divine Blood Demon Kings multiplied until there were almost 1,000 of them. Every Divine Blood Demon King had a drop of pseudo-god blood in them. Furthermore, their vitality was much stronger than ordinary Divine Blood Demons. In the end, Yi Xian only killed 100 Divine Blood Demon Kings and obtained 100 drops of pseudo-god blood. So difficult to deal with. Yi Xian could not help but sigh inwardly. If he had been a rank 2 sovereign just now, he should have been able to kill all the Divine Blood Demon Kings. Unfortunately, he was only a rank 1 sovereign. If he had to blame someone, he could only blame himself for underestimating his enemy. He should have broken through again. However, now that he had broken through to rank 1 sovereign, he would need more than 500 drops of pseudo-god blood to level up. This was not a small number. He would need at least 1 or 2 days. Don't forget that Yi Xian was currently doing a random mission. The longer he took, the lower the reward. Chase. Yi Xian did not care too much. He decided to chase after the divine blood demon kings and kill as many as he could. However, when these sacred blood lesser demon kings met other sacred blood demons and sacred blood demon generals, they could fuse with them and grow. After that, they would gather together again. The divine blood demon kings were reborn again. Ding! The target of the death warrant has reappeared.